Chapter 407. Aunt Twelfth looked at the pitiful Li Jiao heir on the ground with a strange look in her eyes. Once upon a time, she had the same identity as Li Jiao heir, but now, she had become an accomplice of Luo Jiangjiang. Her fate was really regrettable. Aunt Twelfth no longer looked at Li Jiao heir and directly explained the situation of the auction house. Oh! Luo Jiangjiang smiled and said strangely, "There's actually such a stupid person. Then I have to go and see." Aunt Twelfth glanced at Li Jiao heir and said, "That young master said he only wanted virgins and asked for 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals. This girl is also one, let's just sell her." This. Luo Jiangjiang seemed a little embarrassed and said, "She is the girl who caused young Master Lu's death. The Crown Prince told me that I must do her myself. Then put her in the Wanchun courtyard and be trampled by thousands of people. If I sell her and the Crown Prince finds out, I'm afraid it will be hard to explain." Aunt Twelfth laughed softly and said, "Dead man, are you so afraid of the Crown Prince?" "How can I say I'm afraid? The Crown Prince and I are sworn brothers, but I can't go against his will," Luo Jiangjiang said with a smile. Aunt Twelfth didn't give up and said, "The people from the Crown Prince's residence are all gone, who knows where this girl came from? Our butterfly pavilion sells so many girls every day. Does the Crown Prince have the time to check the girls we can't sell every day?" But Luo Jiangjiang was still hesitant. Aunt Twelfth didn't wait for him to finish and said, "The Crown Prince is just angry for a while and will calm down in a few days. He won't think of this. That's 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals, which is equivalent to a 5th-rank spiritual weapon." Hee, that's right. Luo Jiangjiang finally compromised and said, "Anyway, the Crown Prince is already dealing with the murderer of Lu Zhenyuan. Although this girl is the root of the problem, she didn't kill Lu Zhenyuan. I don't think the Crown Prince will pay too much attention. You take her there. I'll go and see what kind of young master is so wasteful," Luo Jiangjiang said as he put on his clothes and prepared to go to the auction house to see the true face of Nie Tian. However, if he knew that Nie Tian was the one who killed Lu Zhenyuan, who knew what expression he would have? After a while, Aunt Twelfth's figure reappeared on the high platform of the auction house, and behind her was a crying girl. It was Li Jiao. "Young master, I've brought another virgin. This is what we agreed on. 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals," Twelfth Maiden said innocently. Her voice was enough to make one's bones melt. Nie Tian saw that the girl on the stage was Li Jiao heir. At this time, Li Jiao heir's clothes were messy, and her face was covered with tear stains. Nie Tian secretly clenched his fists and was slightly moved. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "No problem. Benefactor, it's you." Li Jiao was surprised to see that the person in front of her was Nie Tian, but she immediately thought of something and swallowed the rest of her words. Aunt Twelfth sensed something and laughed. "Do you know her?" "No, I don't." Nie Tian shook his head. Aunt Twelfth rolled her eyes, but she was more concerned about Nie Tian's 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals, so she didn't think much about it. However, Luo Jiangjiang, who was hiding on the side of the high platform, saw and heard everything. He saw the suppressed anger in Nie Tian's eyes, and he also heard how Li Jiao addressed Nie Tian. "Benefactor?" Luo Jiangjiang's heart jumped. This kid looks like a teenager, but his strength is actually at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. I heard that the one who killed Lu Zhenyuan was also a teenager. But wasn't that teenager taken to the heavenly prison by Gu Wuyo? Could it be that this kid escaped from the heavenly prison? Impossible. Luo Jiangjiang subconsciously thought that it was impossible. After all, in a place like the heavenly prison, not to mention a teenager at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm, even a high-level true energy realm martial artist couldn't escape. The news of someone escaping from the Great Chu heavenly prison hadn't spread yet, so Luo Jiangjiang didn't know about it. But this guy was very cautious and very cunning. "Young master, this lady is yours. You can take her away." Aunt 12 smiled, indicating that Li Jiaoer could stand next to Nie Tian. "Wait." At this moment, Luo Jiangjiang's voice suddenly sounded, and he walked over with large strides. And Aunt 12 was slightly taken aback and thought, "This dead man, don't tell me he's going back on his word again." Nie Tian saw a big fatty suddenly walk over, and his strength was actually at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm, so he couldn't help but be vigilant. When the people below the stage saw that the person who suddenly walked out was actually Luo Jiangjiang, they started discussing. Why did Lord Luo Jiangjiang come out? Even if it's 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals, it's not worth alarming him. Yeah, could it be that Lord Luo Jiangjiang has taken a fancy to that girl, so he doesn't want to sell her? How is that possible? Lord Luo Jiangjiang has enjoyed more women than you have seen. Why would he be reluctant to part with this girl? He must be joking. Luo Jiangjiang walked over and said with a chubby face, "Young master, I'm really sorry, but this girl is already wanted by someone. Aunt 12 doesn't know, so you can't take her away." "Already wanted?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment and then said, "But this young master has already made a deal with Aunt 12. Since it's a deal, I can't go back on my word." "Yes, Lord Luo, I have already sold this girl to young master. It's not good to go back on my word now," Aunt 12 also said. She didn't want to lose 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals. Luo Jiangjiang glared at her fiercely, and the latter's face turned cold. She immediately lowered her head and didn't dare to speak again. Luo Jiangjiang looked at Nie Tian and said with a smile, "Young master, my Wanchun courtyard is a place for business, and we pay attention to first come first served. Since this girl is wanted by someone in advance, even if you and Aunt 12 have made a deal, it's useless." Although he was speaking with a smile, everyone could sense the coldness in Luo Jiangjiang's words. "Oh!" A strange smile appeared on Nie Tian's face as he said, "May I know who wants this girl?" Luo Jiangjiang laughed and said loudly, "Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince." As soon as these words came out, everyone felt a chill. In the Great Chu Empire, who dared to snatch people from the Crown Prince? Nie Tian frowned slightly at this time, and a cold expression flashed across his face. He said, "What if I insist on taking this girl away?" As soon as his voice fell, Nie Tian's whole body released a fierce anger. As soon as Luo Jiangjiang appeared, he already knew that it was absolutely impossible to take Li Jiaoer away with money. Moreover, Li Jiaoer showed a frightened look in front of Luo Jiangjiang, which undoubtedly meant that Luo Jiangjiang had done something to Li Jiaoer. This made Nie Tian even angrier, and he was determined not to tolerate it anymore. Chapter 408. Who the hell are you? Luo Jiangjiang asked the question in his heart. The killing intent on his face was no longer concealed. He had long been suspicious of Nie Tian. At this moment, seeing Nie Tian so insistent on taking Li Jiaoer away, he became even more suspicious. He already faintly believed that Nie Tian was the one who killed Lu Zhenyuan. Although he didn't know how Nie Tian escaped from the heavenly prison, as long as he could capture him and hand him over to the Crown Prince, it would definitely be a great merit. Who I am, you don't deserve to know. But I must take her away. Nie Tian's expression was cold, and the ruthlessness in his eyes was terrifying. Aunt 12 also noticed that something was wrong at this moment. She wanted to say something, but when she saw Nie Tian's eyes, she was so scared that she couldn't speak. "You want to take her away? I'm going to kill her." Luo Jiangjiang no longer probed. A big hand suddenly stretched out and an invisible hand grabbed Li Jiaoer's neck, causing her little face to turn red. "You dare!" Almost at the same time, a sword chi whistled out and condensed into a long whip, directly strangling Aunt 12's neck and lifting her into the air. "Luo, save me." Aunt 12's tongue was hanging out as she reached out to Luo Jiangjiang for help. "Don't kill her." Luo Jiangjiang panicked. Ant 12 was very important to him. Butterfly Pavilion's business was so good because of Ant 12's contribution. Let's change. Luo Jiangjiang blurted out. Loosening his grip, Li Jiao Air was finally able to breathe and coughed desperately. Let her come over first. Nie Tian didn't let go and said cold. Okay. Luo Jiangjiang looked up and saw several black figures appearing around him. He smiled coldly in his heart. Brat, do you think you can escape? The 10,000 Spring Courtyard's shadow guards were all true element boundary cultivators. Dealing with a trivial third-layer giant spirit cultivator was as easy as a cat catching a mouse. Li Jiao Air walked down from the high platform and came to Nie Tian's side, whispering, "Thank you, benefactor." Nie Tian ignored her and said to Murong Xing, who was beside him, "Protect them." Murong Xing reacted and nodded heavily. Nie Tian could tell from Murong Xing's previous anger that the latter also hated the mess in front of him. More importantly, Murong Xing was at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm. Even her maid, Yao was a manifestation realm martial practitioner. It was obvious that Murong Xing's identity was not simple. There was definitely a great force behind him. Yao was also stunned. Clearly, she hadn't expected Nie Tian to be so monstrous. When the other party refused to sell, he actually wanted to rob them. Protect them? Luo Jiangjiang glanced at Murong Xing and directly regarded her as Nie Tian's helper. He sneered and said, "With just the two of you? Die." In the next moment, Nie Tian roared and flung Ant 12th away. 12th Maiden! Luo Jiangjiang shouted and flew over to catch 12th Maiden. Bam! Nie Tian's figure also rose from the ground at this moment. He stabbed his sword at Luo Jiangjiang, who was in midair. He didn't want to kill Ant 12th at all. He just wanted to use the latter as bait to lure Luo Jiangjiang. At the same time, 4 figures in black appeared in midair. They were the hidden guards of the Myriad Spring Courtyard. Ant 12th was already thrown away by Nie Tian, so they had no more scruples. Luo Jiangjiang sensed that something was wrong and didn't dare to save Ant 12th Maiden. Instead, he slapped at Nie Tian. Pfft. Unfortunately, Nie Tian's sword aura was sharp and murderous. It directly broke through the palm's shadow and the sword aura bombarded and pierced Luo Jiangjiang's shoulder. Nie Tian's figure then flew over and stabbed Luo Jiangjiang's shoulder with the absolute heaven slash. The hidden guards were still a step too late. Nie Tian controlled Luo Jiangjiang and landed on the high platform. At this moment, Nie Tian's sword was stabbed in Luo Jiangjiang's shoulder, and the sword aura invaded the latter's body. As long as Nie Tian willed it, the surging sword aura could blast Luo Jiangjiang into minced meat. Almost no one under the platform could react to the sudden scene. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on Nie Tian, as if he were a monster that had just walked out of a desolate world. Everyone in the Great Chu Empire knew that the boss of the Myriad Spring Courtyard was Luo Jiangjiang on the surface, but the real controller behind the scenes was Crown Prince Wang Haorui. Causing trouble in the Myriad Spring Courtyard was a direct challenge to the authority of the Crown Prince. Nie Tian was either a madman or a fool to openly challenge the Crown Prince in the Great Chu Empire. Because everyone knew that going against the Crown Prince would never end well. A good ending might be a corpse on the street, and the result might be the annihilation of the whole family. Brat, do you know what you're doing? Do you know who I am? Although Luo Jiangjiang was under Nie Tian's control, the fierceness on his face didn't change, and he even opened his mouth to threaten. Nie Tian smiled coldly. The tip of his sword turned, and the sword aura immediately collided in Luo Jiangjiang's body. Ah! My Yuan meridians! Luo Jiangjiang immediately howled like a pig being slaughtered. He never expected that Nie Tian would actually directly destroy his Yuan meridians. Nie Tian's shocking means were too ruthless. It was not the style of a teenager at all. Let them back down. Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with Luo Jiangjiang, and said coldly. He could naturally see that Luo Jiangjiang's identity wasn't simple. It seemed to be very high, and he could be used as a shield. If not for this, Luo Jiangjiang would have already become a pool of blood at this time. Back down. Luo Jiangjiang finally understood Nie Tian's fierceness at this time, and hurriedly shouted. The 4 black-clothed secret guards figures stopped, and they didn't dare to move. Luo Jiangjiang was the boss of the Thousand Spring Courtyard, and also the Crown Prince's sworn brother. If he died, it would be troublesome. At this time, some people in the hall felt that something was wrong, and they all stood up, wanting to leave this place. However, Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and bellowed in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't move!" As his voice fell, 2 enormous sword auras, like flood dragons, blasted towards the exit of the hall. Bang! Bang! A loud bang sounded, and the hall's door was almost blasted into pieces. Most of these people were the sons of rich families, and their strength wasn't that great. After being shocked by Nie Tian, they all stopped and returned to their seats, not daring to move. Nie Tian glanced at the crowd and shouted loudly, "Everyone, didn't you come here to seek excitement? Now that the show is about to start, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Nie Tian used a sound wave martial skill, and his voice exploded like thunder, and had the power to break rocks. Everyone present felt their ears go numb, as if they were going to explode at any time. Today, no one is allowed to leave. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and everyone present was terrified, and their faces turned ashen. Murong Ziying and Yaoer, the master and servant, looked at Nie Tian, and felt strange, not knowing what this guy was going to do. Nie Tian knew that those who came to the transformation butterfly veranda were all people with some status. Since he had already caused such a ruckus in the transformation butterfly veranda, how could he let these people go so easily? At this time, the only expert present, Gooden, who was at the first layer of quintessential element, looked at Nie Tian with a complacent expression. Obviously, he had no fear and was waiting to watch the show. Chapter 409. Gooden was slightly stunned, but he immediately laughed and said, "Brother, I like your methods. I will definitely help you. Just say it." Nie Tian nodded slightly. He could tell that it was Gooden's first time coming to the butterfly loft, and he wasn't as wretched as the others. When he was bidding for Yaya just now, he wanted to save her. Therefore, Nie Tian guessed that Gooden wasn't a bad person and could be borrowed to help. It had to be said that Nie Tian had a very sharp eye for people. Gooden was a mercenary. This time, he came to the butterfly loft in the Thousand Spring Yard to broaden his horizons and see how the rich and powerful live. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing. When he saw Yaya, Gooden's heart was filled with sympathy, but Nie Tian's forceful interference forced him to give up. He was a very lazy mercenary who wasn't bound by anyone and only focused on cultivation. He didn't have as much wealth as Nie Tian. Nie Tian took out a spatial ring and glanced at it. He smiled coldly and said, "Everyone, put all the good stuff you have into this ring." Everyone was shocked by Nie Tian's words. 2 words appeared in their minds. Robbery? Who would have thought that Nie Tian wanted to rob them in this life and death situation? Murong Ziying and Yaoer stared at Nie Tian with strange looks in their eyes. What on earth is this guy thinking? Is this the time to rob? Nie Tian didn't care about the others' reactions and directly threw the spatial ring to Gooden. He said, "Brother, help me collect the stuff. I'll give you half of the stuff we get later." Gooden caught the spatial ring and couldn't react for a long time. Nie Tian's thinking was too strange. He actually wanted to rob these rich and powerful people. However, Gooden immediately chuckled and said, "Brother, that's a good idea. I like it." Nie Tian nodded slightly with a strange smile on his face. Everyone here was rich and powerful. They definitely had many good things on them. After such a calamity, Nie Tian would definitely make a huge fortune. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Godan helping him now was dragging the ladder down with him. If something were to happen, Gooden wouldn't be able to stay out of it. Moreover, all the people present had harmed a lot of girls. If he didn't make them pay the price, Nyetian would feel really guilty. Everyone's faces were as pale as paper. How could they dare to resist? They handed over everything they had on them. Whether it was origin crystals, spirit weapons, spirit pills, or jade stones, none of them dared to keep a single item on them. This young master, what are you trying to do? On the high platform, Luo Jiangjiang's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. The hole in his chest was bleeding non-stop, and his whole body was dyed red. To make matters worse, his elemental meridian was crippled by Nyetian. If he didn't receive treatment now, he definitely wouldn't be able to last more than half an hour. Luo Jiangjiang really couldn't understand why he, a dignified 9th-level giant spirit martial artist, couldn't even block a single sword from Nyetian, and was even completely controlled by the latter. Nyetian's strength was really too strange. Nyetian raised his head and looked at the 4 black-clothed shadow guards in midair. He then stared at Luo Jiangjiang and said cold, "I only wanted to bring a girl away, but you just wouldn't let me. Now that things have come to this, you asked for it yourself." The corner of Luo Jiangjiang's mouth twitched. He subconsciously glanced at Li Jiaoer, and his heart was filled with regret. If he let Nyetian bring the girl away just now, there wouldn't be such a scene in front of him. But how could he have imagined that Nyetian could actually control the situation in the blink of an eye? "Young master, you let me go. This matter had come to an end. How about it?" Luo Jiangjiang endured the intense pain and said with a trembling voice, "Let you go?" Nyetian sneered and said, "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? As long as I let you go, I'm afraid that your subordinates will tear me into pieces in the next second." "No, they won't. I guarantee that they won't dare to hurt you," Luo Jiangjiang hurriedly said. Blood flowed out of his mouth. Nyetian curled his lips and smiled. "This fatty really thinks that I'm an inexperienced young man." Nyetian no longer cared about Luo Jiangjiang. Of course, he wouldn't kill the latter. He still had to rely on this card to walk out of the Wan Chun courtyard. After Gooden looted everything, Nyetian would leave with Murong Xing and the others. As for how to settle this girl, he could slowly think of a way. After a while, Gooden completed his task. He directly threw the spatial ring to Nyetian and said loudly, "Brother, I've finished helping you. Do you need any more help?" "Of course." Nyetian took the spatial ring and kept it. He then looked at Luo Jiangjiang and smiled sinisterly. "Now, send us out." Okay. Luo Jiangjiang nodded repeatedly. In his heart, he was still thinking that as long as Nyetian let him go, he would definitely make the latter pay the most disastrous price. "Want to leave?" Just as Nyetian was about to leave, a cold roar suddenly sounded. Then, a figure flew over. "Your Highness!" The figure landed. Everyone saw his face and exclaimed at the same time. Nyetian also looked at the person. It was the young man he saw in the bloody death field in the imperial prison. This person was none other than the crown prince of Great Chu, Wang Haorui. "Son of a bitch, you really escaped from the imperial prison." Wang Haorui saw Nyetian clearly. The surprise and shock on his face couldn't be any greater. He just heard from Wang Jintao that Human Demon destroyed the dungeon and escaped with Nyetian. Wang Haorui didn't believe it. He personally went to the imperial prison to take a look. After returning to the crown prince's residence, he suddenly felt that Li Jiaoer was a very important card. Maybe he could use her to force Nyetian out. So, he hurried to the Thousand Spring courtyard. Thus, he saw the scene in front of him. "You really killed Lu Zhenyuan." The shock in Luo Jiangjiang's heart turned into fear on his face. His eyes almost popped out. "So what?" Nyetianling sneered. He looked at Wang Haorui and said, "He deserves to die." Wang Haorui had never been provoked like this before. He couldn't restrain his anger and roared, "Son of a bitch, You killed someone close to this crown prince for a lowly commoner. Now you dare to openly provoke this crown prince. You're courting death. Lowly commoner? Nye Tian smiled deeply. His eyes surged with the fiercest killing intent. He said coldly, So in your eyes, the people of Great Chu are all pigs and dogs, only worthy of being slaughtered by you. A crown prince like you is worse than a beast. Wang Haorui looked at Nye Tian. He couldn't believe his own words. His body was trembling. His blood was trembling. Even his eyes were trembling. Without a doubt, this was the trembling of anger. Since he was young, Wang Haorui had always been looked up to by others. At this time, there was actually someone who called him worse than a beast in front of so many people. He couldn't accept this kind of thing. You say that again? Wang Haorui's eyes shot out extreme anger. His whole body seemed like it was about to explode. Chapter 410. Nye Tian originally thought that Lan Binjifeng and Wu Ke Gongsheng and these princes were already shameless enough. Unexpectedly, compared to Wang Haorui in front of him, they were simply model princes. Wang Haorui allowed his men to do evil, and even ran a place like Wan Chun Courtyard. These teenage girls, which one of them did not have a father or mother, could it be because of their lowly background, they were to be trampled on and humiliated? Could it be because Wang Haorui was the crown prince, he could manipulate other people's fate and self-esteem? This time, Wang Haorui met Nye Tian. He will taste the feeling of being trampled under someone's foot. When Nye Tian's words fell, the whole place was dead silent, like the temporary calm before the storm. Those girls who were being auctioned looked at Nye Tian dumbfoundedly. They never thought that one day there would be a strange and powerful person who would care so much about their life and death. Brother! Well said. Gooden stared at Nye Tian for a long time, suddenly laughed and shouted, What bullshit crown prince! He is worse than AF * king beast. If I were the emperor, I would definitely hang this bullshit crown prince up and beat him every day. Nye Tian looked at Gooden, so this guy was also a madman. Ah! Suddenly, Wang Haorui roared crazily, suddenly pointed at Nye Tian and shouted crazily, Kill him! Kill him for me! The 4 black-clothed secret guards in the air, at first, were stunned, then immediately reacted and became eager. Your Royal Highness, save me, save me! Luo Jiangjiang saw Wang Haorui directly went crazy, immediately scared out of his wits. His face turned green. Humph! Nye Tian smiled coldly and said, Sorry, your Royal Highness is angry. He will not care about you anymore, you are useless. With that, Nye Tian pulled out his long sword, then his body shook, releasing several sharp sword qi, actually broke all the meridians in Luo Jiangjiang's limbs. This time, Luo Jiangjiang would not die a quick death. He would only die slowly in unimaginable pain. Nye Tian looked at him and said coldly, Sometimes I like bad people because no matter what I do to them, I will not feel guilty. On the contrary, it is very satisfying. Wang Haorui was already crazy, certainly did not care about Luo Jiangjiang's life, so this card, for Nye Tian, had no meaning. Kill him, kill him, kill him for me! Luo Jiangjiang was already dead, so Wang Haorui did not have the slightest hesitation. Boom! 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 In the next moment, 4 black-garbed guards swooped down from the sky and launched attacks at Nye Tian simultaneously. Be careful! When Murong Ziying saw this scene, his heart jumped to his throat. The true Qi's Ling, Ling Ling Yen, Tian Tian's Ling, Zhen Wu and Tian Ling's Yan's said. Nye Tian jerked his head up. As soon as the star soul steel inside of him sensed it, a star soul flew out. Boom! Nye Tian struck out with his palm. Soon after, a powerful palm print soared into the sky. Its enormous momentum was like a huge wave in the sea. Bang! 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 For muffled sounds rang out. The attacks of the 4 black-clothed secret guards were actually blocked by the palm print. F***CK. This scene caused Gooden to suck in a breath of cold air. He'd never imagined that the youth before him, who was only at the 3rd level of the giant soul realm, would be able to unleash such power in an instant. Gooden reckoned that he could also resist the joint attack of 4 first-level true energy boundary martial artists, but he would definitely not be able to come out unscathed like Nye Tian. Nye Tian's strength could only be described with one word: strange and unpredictable. I'll hold them off. You guys take him away. Nye Tian relied on a 3rd-ranked astral soul to forcefully withstand the combined attack of 4 shadow guards. The blood in his body churned wildly as he stared at Go Dan and shouted. All right. Gooden agreed. Stimulated by Nye Tian, he instantly felt the blood in his body boil, and his fighting spirit soared. Want to leave? Not so easy. Wang Haorui sneered. Immediately after, a dozen black-clothed men appeared behind him, and all of them were at the 9th level of the giant soul realm. F***CK. Gooden cursed and wanted to rush out. However, it was clearly impossible to bring more than 30 ordinary teenage girls with them. Gooden's skin was thick, so he could take a beating. These girls, on the other hand, could not even withstand the dissipating qi. A little bit of yuan qi could kill them on the spot. Everyone, gather together. Stick close to me. At this time, Murong Ziying suddenly shouted, and a scroll appeared in his hand. Seeing that scroll, Nye Tian was slightly stunned, and his heart was not small. Space-time transfer scroll. That's right, the scroll in Murong Ziying's hand was a space-time transfer scroll. Space-time transfer scroll was a very magical item that could allow people to transfer between time and space in an instant. In essence, it was actually a space-time spiritual array that could only be refined by a rank 4 spiritual array master. More importantly, only space-time spiritual array masters could refine space-time transfer scrolls. Space-time attribute. This was another magical primordial spirit attribute that was different from the 9 elemental attribute. It was a primordial spirit attribute that was even rarer than the light and darkness attribute. Hence, space-time spiritual array masters were extremely rare. Even if it was Nye Tian who had lived 2 lifetimes, the number of space-time spiritual array masters that he had seen could not be counted on one hand. It was precisely because space-time spiritual array masters were rare that a rank 1 space-time transfer scroll was comparable to a rank 6 spirit pill or rank 6 spirit artifact. Nye Tian never would have thought that Murong Ziying actually had a space-time transfer scroll in her hands. This lass's background is not simple. Nye Tian glanced at Murong Ziying and said in his heart. But the space-time transfer scroll in Murong Ziying's hands was clearly just a rank 1 scroll. The teleportation distance was shorter, but the teleportation array's range was smaller, so those girls had to get close to her. Gooden, protect Miss Murong well. Don't let anyone get close to her. Nye Tian roared, reminding Gooden. A rank 1 space-time transfer scroll's teleportation time needed at least 10 seconds. Within these 10 seconds, it must not be interrupted. Miss Murong. Murong Ziying slightly frowned, immediately blushed, and said in her heart, This guy already knew that I'm a girl. Murong Ziying knew that this was not the time to think about this. Her divine sense entered the teleportation scroll. In the next moment, an invisible array appeared, enveloping Murong Ziying and the group of girls. Stop them, don't let them go. Wang Haorui immediately sensed something. He roared and was the first to rush over, wanting to stop Murong Ziying. Hee. Gooden laughed and roared. Bullshit Crown Prince, you came at the right time. Let Grandpa send you to heaven. Vajra critical strike. Finished speaking, Gooden roared and punched out. A fist shadow appeared in the air, surging with terrifying true origin chi. Chapter 411. Save me. Wang Haorui obviously didn't expect Gooden's strength to be so tyrannical. The terrifying aura in front of him made him tremble with fear. Your Highness! The 4 dark guards in the air shouted at the same time and attacked at the same time. Swish! 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 4 palm shadows flew out at the same time and collided with the fist shadow in the air. Bang! With a loud bang, a visible shock wave instantly exploded. The true element realm martial artist's true element chi surged in all directions like wind blade. Ah! Wang Haorui screamed in pain and was sent flying by the shockwave. Not good! Nie Tian was alarmed when he sensed that the airwave was rushing towards the space-time teleportation portal. With a loud shout, a layer of green light immediately lit up inside of his body and gushed out, enveloping the space-time teleportation portal like a shield. Bang! With a muffled sound, the space-time transfer array shook, but it wasn't destroyed. Fortunately, Nie Tian used the extreme wood jade sky battle armor to block the shockwave. Otherwise, the Grade 1 spiritual array wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of true element chi. At this time, the transfer array suddenly lit up with a layer of dazzling white light. Everyone was blinded by this white light and had to close their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, Murong Ziying and the others had already disappeared. Fortunately, although Nie Tian didn't take the transfer array, he didn't have any burdens around him. With his strength, it was more than enough to kill his way out. "Brother, let's go." Guden saw that the people behind him had safely left and shouted to Nie Tian with a smile. Nie Tian nodded slightly and was ready to leave. Bastard! At this time, Wang Haorui crawled up from the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. He shouted angrily, "You want to leave after saving people? Kill them all." Fortunately, the 4 dark guards acted in time and Wang Haorui's life was saved. "You think you can stop me with these shrimp soldiers?" Nie Tian glanced at the surrounding black-clothed people and didn't put them in his eyes. At this time, Wang Haorui had a total of 4 true element realm dark guards and a dozen giant spirit realm black-clothed guards. This kind of strength was very intimidating. It would be very difficult for Nie Tian to defeat these people, but if he insisted on escaping, the other party would not be able to stop him. Nie Tian and Eggface leaped up at the same time, rushing towards the entrance of the hall. One sword to illuminate the night. Nie Tian's long sword opened the way and slashed out. In the air, a huge sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long came crashing down. Boom! The entire hall shook violently on the verge of collapse. The people in the hall were instantly killed and injured. Ghostly wails and wolf howls resounded. What a powerful sword chi! Guden sensed the terrifying aura within the sword chi and couldn't help but look at Nie Tian with deep admiration. He was not surprised by Nie Tian's strength, but by the latter's talent. He was only in his teens, but he was already at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. The power of his sword was something that even a 9th level giant spirit realm martial artist would not dare to approach. Such talent could be said to be incomparably rare. Guden considered himself a genius, reaching the 1st level of the true essence realm at the age of 30. But when he compared himself with Nie Tian, he suddenly felt that he had lived his age in vain. The dozen or so 9th level giant spirit realm black-robed guards were shocked by the power of Nie Tian's sword. All of them subconsciously retreated, not daring to step forward. Trash! Wang Haorui scolded angrily. If he wasn't injured, he would definitely rush up to stop them. The 4 hidden guards were also wary of the power of Nie Tian's great black murderous seal just now, so they were a little cautious. "We can't stop them. All of you will die." Wang Haorui roared continuously, completely crazed. The muscles on his face were twisted due to anger, looking very sinister. The dozen or so guards instantly trembled and had no choice but to step forward. Everyone in Chuyang City knew about Wang Haorui's ruthlessness. What he said now was definitely not a joke. If Nie Tian and Guden escaped, none of these guards would be able to survive. "Kill!" One of the guards hardened his heart, and a long saber appeared on his back. It was the giant spirit true body. The huge saber blade almost tore a hole in the ceiling of the hall. "Courting death!" Nie Tianling sneered, and the sword absolute heaven slash was used again. Vast sword chi spread out 100 meters, and the whistling momentum was extremely sharp, as though the surrounding air was pulled tight. Bang! With a dull sound, the sword chi exploded, and the guard's saber primordial spirit was directly blown away, and his entire body was sent flying. When the other guards saw this scene, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Their hearts were filled with horror, and even their bodies began to tremble. Impossible! Wang Haorui shouted angrily. You only have the strength of the third-level giant spirit realm. How can you have such terrifying strength? Previously at the Blood Death Ground, when Nye Tian easily killed the demonic Blood Ape King, Wang Haorui was already shocked by the former's horrifying strength. Now that he saw it up close, the aura that rushed towards him made him even more terrified. Humph! Nye Tianling laughed and said, An idiot like you doesn't deserve to know. You! Wang Haorui's eyes were bloodshot, and he couldn't wait to tear Nye Tian into pieces. Nye Tian and Guden rushed over, and they were about to rush out of the hall. At this moment the 4 shadow guards moved. They knew that if they couldn't stop Nye Tian and Guden, Wang Haorui might really kill them. Boom! One of the shadow guards punched out, and his fist was wrapped in true energy chi, breaking through the air. Huh! Nye Tian slightly furrowed his brows. It was not easy for him to resist the attack of a true energy realm martial artist. Just now, he was able to resist the combined attack of 4 people at the same time, and it was all because of the power of a third-rank star soul. At this moment, Nye Tian was hesitating whether to use his third-rank star soul or not. There were 2 third-rank star souls on the star soul tablet, and they could be considered as Nye Tian's life-saving trump card. If he used them on this shadow guard, it would be a waste. Scram! Just as Nye Tian was hesitating, Guden punched out, and a terrifying aura rolled out. It was actually much more tyrannical than the shadow guards. Purring! The 2 fists collided, and the shadow guard was sent flying with a miserable howl. On the other hand, Guden had a face full of laughter, and was not injured in the slightest. Nye Tian glanced at Guden and said in his heart, This guy's name is really old-fashioned, but his strength is really not for show. The power of this punch, even a second-level true energy realm martial artist might not be able to withstand it. When the other 3 shadow guards saw this, their hearts were overwhelmed with shock, and they subconsciously retreated. When Nye Tian saw the fear on the faces of the 3, he immediately laughed coldly, and his gaze locked onto Wang Haorui, and he suddenly stabbed out with his sword. Shwa! A sword light flew out like lightning, and a cold, killing intent pressed towards Wang Haorui. Pooh! Wang Haorui didn't even have the slightest reaction, and the sword light actually cut off half of his face. Ah! My face! Blood spurted out, and Wang Haorui screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Nye Tian didn't kill him, but chose an even crueler way to attack him. Shwa! Without waiting for Wang Haorui to finish screaming, another sword light flashed, and the other side of his face was also cut off. Chapter 412. Son of a bitch, I'll kill you! Wang Haorui's face was dripping with blood, and the pain that seeped into his bones caused him to go completely insane. He actually charged straight at Nye Tian. Courting death. Nye Tian's entire body was brimming with killing intent. He had not killed Wang Haorui just now because he did not want the matter to become too big. Nye Tian's plan was to kill Wang Haorui after seeing the great Chu Emperor. But if the latter wholeheartedly wanted to die, he absolutely would not be polite. Just as Wang Haorui was charging over without a care for anything, Nye Tian suddenly felt a terrifying aura appear behind him. His expression instantly changed. Nye Tian suddenly turned around. A purple-clothed figure had appeared not even 10 meters behind him. Nye Tian's mental strength had already reached rank 46, and he could grasp even the slightest movement within 1,000 meters. Ordinary martial artists would be able to immediately sense him if they were within 100 meters of him. But this purple-clothed figure was able to silently approach within 10 meters of Nye Tian. It was truly strange. What terrifying killing intent! Nie Tian looked at the purple-clothed person and instantly felt the latter's terrifying killing intent almost solidify and envelop him. The purple-clothed person was very skilled in controlling killing intent. When he had approached Nie Tian just now, he had not revealed any killing intent at all. Now that he had locked onto Nie Tian, the boundless killing intent was almost suffocating. Assassin! Nie Tian immediately deduced the purple-clothed person's identity. Assassin, only an assassin could control his killing intent to such a degree. And without a doubt, this person was a top assassin. His killing ability was definitely not inferior to the old assassin of the Dragon Blood Martial Group. Only, why would a place like Myriad Spring Courtyard have an assassin? Senior apprentice brother, kill him for me. Although the purple-clothed person's face was covered by the purple robe, Wang Haorui recognized him at a glance and even called him senior apprentice brother. Senior apprentice brother? Nie Tian was even more puzzled. No matter what, Wang Haorui was the crown prince of the Great Chu Empire. Why would he be the same master as an assassin? Brother, this kid is a bit strange. Guden had also sensed the purple-clothed person's terror and warned Nie Tian in a low voice. Nie Tian of a slight nod, all his attention focused on the purple-clothed person, not daring to act rashly. At this moment, the purple-clothed man was like a sharp arrow waiting to be shot. The moment the bowstring moved, it would be the moment to claim his life. At this time, the purple-clothed person had arrived. Everyone was stunned at the purple-clothed person's arrival. At this moment, everyone was stunned by the arrival of the purple-clothed man. A strange and austere atmosphere spread in the air. Swish! In the next moment, a streak of terrifying sword chi shot out towards Nie Tian like a sharp arrow. Nie Tian didn't even have time to react. The origin star stone within him trembled slightly, causing him to move slightly. Pooh! Even so, Nie Tian was still unable to completely avoid the sword chi. His arm was affected by the sword chi, and a horrifying wound appeared. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed his entire arm red. What a fast sword chi! Nie Tian's face sank. The shock in his heart was written all over his face. Two words appeared in his mind. Sword force. That's right. This was the sword momentum. It was a level higher than sword intent. Just now, before the purple-clothed man's sword chi shot out, it had already formed a sword force that enveloped Nie Tian. It was precisely by relying on the momentum of the sword that his sword chi had reached such a shocking speed that even Nie Tian had no time to defend himself. If it weren't for the fact that Nie Tian had the primal star stone in his body and had a strong sense of danger, he would have been pierced through by the purple-robed man's sword chi and become a corpse. Nie Tian had never imagined that he would actually encounter a swordsman with sword momentum. The so-called sword momentum was a space of sword intent that was derived from sword intent. It was similar to the spirit wheel space of a spirit wheel realm warrior, but not as overbearing as the spirit wheel space. In the sword momentum, the swordsman's sword chi and sword intent would be enhanced by several folds. Even the speed and power would be doubled. That was why the purple-clothed man's attack was so terrifying and caught him off guard. The purple-clothed man's sword chi landed and injured Nie Tian's arm. However, what appeared in his eyes was not joy, but astonishment. Obviously, he did not expect Nie Tian to be able to dodge the fatal blow. You are not bad to be able to dodge my killer move. No wonder Lone Wolf would die in your hands. The purple-clothed man said faintly. His voice was as soft as silk, as though he was sobbing from hell, giving off an indescribable feeling of oppression. You are indeed an assassin. When Nie Tian heard the purple-clothed man mention the Lone Wolf assassin, he immediately understood that the person in front of him was an assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nie Tian had only been in the Great Chu Empire for a day. He originally thought that no matter how powerful the people from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion were, they would need at least 10 days to half a month to find him. He did not expect that the assassin would appear in less than a day. Obviously, the purple-clothed assassin in front of him knew of Nye Tion's identity. And he was the one who replaced Lone Wolf and continued to pursue and kill Nye Tion. Nye Tion still remembered that Gu Yi said that the assassins from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion were divided into 7 levels. From low to high, they were black iron, bronze, silver, gold, purple gold, diamond, and black emperor. The lone wolf assassin from before was a bronze assassin. Thinking about it, the purple-clothed man in front of him should be a silver assassin. The purple-clothed man's strength was much higher than Lone Wolf. The latter was only a swordsman with sword intent, while the purple-clothed man was a swordsman with sword momentum. Sword intent and sword momentum, the difference of one realm was like heaven and earth. If not for the raw star stone just now, Nye Tion would already be a corpse. The purple-clothed man did not have any reaction. He suddenly raised his hand and a token flew out. Nye Tion immediately caught it. It was the death god token made of silver. He guessed correctly. The person in front of him was a silver-rank assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nye Tion was very curious. How could a silver-rank assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion be the great Chu Crown Prince's senior brother? It was really strange. Nye Tion. At this time, the purple-clothed man shouted out Nye Tion's name. His gloomy voice sounded again. The death god token is already in your hands. You are the person that the death god has set his eyes on. Take my next sword and you will be safe for the time being. Nye Tion. Hearing this name, everyone was taken aback. Guden exclaimed, So you are the Lord of Heaven Luo City. Lord of Heaven Luo City Nye Tion. Wang Haorui was also surprised. Lord of Heaven Luo City Nye Tion. This name had spread throughout the entire 3,000 small worlds because of the Dragon Blood martial meet. Even those who did not participate in the Dragon Blood martial meet knew this name. Nye Tion did not care about the others' reactions. Looking at the purple-clothed man, he said, If I take your next sword, you will let me leave? Yes. The purple-clothed man nodded slightly, then laughed softly. It's a pity that no one has been able to take this sword of mine until now. You are no exception. Is that so? Nye Tion smiled faintly and said, I only want to say in this world there is no sword that I Nye Tion cannot take. Chapter 413. The purple-robed man's expression was cold like a piece of ice that wouldn't melt for 1,000 years. There was not a single ripple in his eyes. His entire body was releasing a faint sword aura that was gentle and light without a trace. However, that faint dangerous aura could not be concealed. He was like a ferocious tiger in hiding. The slightest movement would put him in danger of death. Since he dared to set a sword move with Nye Tion, it was enough to show that he had full confidence in his own sword move. Nye Tion stared at the purple-robed man with an expressionless face and a calm heart. He was very clear that the person standing in front of him was not a human but a killing weapon. The silver-rank assassin of the Lin Xian Heaven Pavilion. Just his control over his killing intent was terrifying. In the hall, everyone retreated a few hundred meters away from Nye Tion and the purple-robed man. Humph. At a certain moment, Wang Haorui's cold eyes released a hint of joy. He said in his heart, Nye Tion, even if you are the Heaven Luo City Lord, there is only one ending for you to meet my senior brother. Death. Wang Haorui was very clear about his senior brother's strength. Not to mention a mere third-level giant spirit warrior, even a third-level true essence warrior would not be able to take a sword from the latter. At this moment, Nye Tion and the purple-robed man stood opposite each other with a distance of about 20 meters. Nye Tion's face was calm and his breathing was steady without a hint of fear. Heaven Luo City Lord, you are indeed powerful. Under my killing intent, you can actually be so calm. You are the most determined person I have ever seen. The purple-robed man's whimpering voice sounded. It was soft and continuous, giving people a very terrifying illusion, as if they had fallen into a deep pool and were unable to extricate themselves. Nie Tian did not speak. He was waiting for the purple-robed man to make a move. He could feel that the purple-robed man was very powerful from that sword move just now. He was definitely stronger than Long Sky, who had the dragon saber arm. Perhaps the purple-robed man's strength was only at first level true essence realm or ninth level giant spirit realm, but his sword Dao had reached the sword power realm. This undoubtedly meant that he was an assassin who specialized in sword Dao. A swordsman in the sword form realm, even if he was only in the giant spirit realm, was definitely more terrifying than most true energy realm martial artists. In his previous life, Nie Tian was a peerless swordsman in the profound meaning of swords. He was also one of the 5 great sword Daos in the heaven realm. He knew every realm of the sword Dao like the back of his hand. At this moment, the purple-clothed man did not move at all. However, Nie Tian could see that an invisible sword vortex had appeared around the purple-robed man. In the next moment, this sword vortex expanded and would erupt with the most terrifying attack. The 10 yuan meridians in Nie Tian's body revolved crazily. The domain origin array seemed to have sensed danger and began to revolve crazily. Streams of star energy surged within his Dantian's yuan meridians. An astral soul appeared on the astral soul steel. As long as Nie Tian willed it, it would instantly erupt forth. Everyone stared blankly at the 2 people in the hall, their faces covered in beads of sweat. The atmosphere in the air was oppressive to the extreme. Nie Tian, prepare to receive the Grim Reaper's greeting. Suddenly, the purple-clothed man's voice sounded out again. It was faint and seemed to be able to disturb people's minds, making them feel endless despair. As the voice fell, the sword vortex on the purple-clothed man's body expanded, enveloping the space of hundreds of meters. It filled the entire hall and instantly enveloped Nie Tian. Space of sword force. When Nie Tian sensed that his body was enveloped by tyrannical sword energy, his expression immediately changed. He felt a tightness in his chest, as if there was an invisible force squeezing him to death. Nie Tian immediately understood that this was the space of a swordsman's space of sword force, also known as sword warp. Sword warp was a terrifying space created by a swordsman using sword energy. In this space, the swordsman's sword energy would be unleashed to the extreme. Nie Tian did not expect that the purple-clothed man in front of him could actually release sword warp. At this moment, he could feel that his yuan meridians were being suppressed. Even the power of the stars, which was known as the origin of strength, showed signs of stagnation. Nie Tian, do you feel the aura of death from the Grim Reaper's greeting? The purple-clothed man had a slight smile on his face, revealing strong self-confidence and endless contempt. Humph! Nie Tian's face was calm and indifferent. The corner of his mouth even curled up slightly. He said, "You want to kill me with a mere sword warp?" The purple-clothed man laughed mockingly and said, "Everyone says that the Tianluo city lord is arrogant. Now that I have seen it, he indeed did not disappoint me. My sword warp can only be broken by the true origin chi of a high-level true origin realm warrior or the spirit wheel space of a spirit wheel realm warrior. I would like to see how the Nie Tian city lord, who is in the giant spirit realm, can break my sword warp." As the coldest voice fell, it was followed by the coldest killing intent in the next moment. 7 dazzling pure white sword shadows suddenly appeared behind the purple-clothed man. Each of them was like an arrow on a bow, ready to be released at any moment. Nie Tian could feel that the power contained in each of the dazzling sword shadows behind the purple-clothed man was definitely not weaker than the attack of a true origin realm warrior. Coupled with the sword warp, the power that the sword shadows could unleash was even more terrifying. At this moment, Nie Tian was in the purple-clothed man's sword warp. His strength and speed were both suppressed. It was impossible for him to dodge the attack with his body technique. So strong. Gooden also realized how terrifying the purple-clothed man was. Each of the 7 dazzling sword shadows could easily kill a true Origin Realm warrior. In front of my senior brother's broken Kuei 7 murders, everyone is a piece of paper, Wang Haorui said sinisterly. His eyes were filled with the most resolute killing intent. He had personally seen the purple-clothed man use the broken Kuei 7 murders to easily kill a true Origin Realm warrior. Nie Tian was only in the giant spirit realm. Even if he had heaven-defying strength, he would definitely not be able to withstand the broken Kuei 7 murders. Die! Like the judgment of the Grim Reaper, the purple-clothed man's body trembled. The 7 sword shadows pierced through the air like lightning, carrying the most piercing killing intent. In the blink of an eye they arrived. The dazzling white light became the most dangerous and fatal thing at this moment, attacking towards Nie Tian. Blood catapult heaven net. Facing the purple-clothed man's ultimate move, Nie Tian's face slightly sank. With a low roar, the star energy in his body surged out and condensed into a large blood-colored net outside his body. Blood catapult heaven net. This was another third-grade star soul in Nie Tian's body. The power of a third-grade star soul was enough for Nie Tian to instantly injure a true Origin Realm warrior. However, facing the purple-clothed man's sword warp and broken Kuei 7 murders, it was still unknown whether he could block it. Swish, swish, swish. In the next moment, the 7 sword shadows pierced through the air and struck the blood catapult heaven net. Buzz. The blood catapult heaven net was like a protective barrier that was extremely tough. Under the impact of the 7 sword shadows, it let out a low cry. 7 deep dents appeared on the blood catapult heaven net, but it did not break. It was still trying its best to resist. Humph! The purple-clothed man laughed cold. In the next moment he shouted, "Break for me!" Chapter 4:14. Nie Tian had already expected that the blood sieve heaven net would be broken, so he wasn't flustered. His body trembled slightly, and surging elemental energy gushed out. A layer of green light appeared, and the extreme wood jade sky battle armor was activated. At the same time, a sword shield appeared in front of him. Bang, bang, bang! The 7 sword shadows bombarded the sword shield, and the sword shield immediately shattered. In the next instant, the sword shadows bombarded Nie Tian's body. Bang! Nie Tian was sent flying. "Brother!" Gooden screamed when he saw this scene. Nie Tian landed heavily on the ground, and his body dragged out a trail of blood that was more than 10 meters long before he finally stopped. But immediately after, he stood up. There were 7 wounds on his body, and his whole body was dripping with blood. It was a terrifying sight. Nie Tian's injuries looked severe, but they weren't fatal. However, the purple-robed man's sword warp and broken Kuei 7 kills were indeed terrifying. Nie Tian had used the third-grade blood sieve heaven net, the sword shield of the Ao sword arts sword 17, and the defense of the extreme wood jade sky battle armor. Even with 3 layers of defense, he was still injured. It showed how powerful the purple-robed man was. Nie Tian knew in his heart that if it wasn't for the third-grade blood sieve heaven net, he would have been a corpse by now. Not dead. When the purple-robed man saw Nie Tian stand up, the joy on his face was instantly replaced by astonishment. His slightly dilated pupils interpreted 3 words: impossible. He had never imagined that Nie Tian could actually block his broken Kuei 7 kills. This was simply impossible. The purple-robed man cultivated the 7 kills sword art, and the broken Kuei 7 kills was regarded as his sure kill move. Coupled with the might of the sword warp and weft, even a 5th-level true essence martial artist would be instantly killed. How could Nie Tian, a mere 3rd-level giant spirit realm warrior, withstand his sure-kill sword? Everything was too strange and unimaginable. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, the purple-robed man would never have believed that someone could be so strong. At this moment, not only was the purple-clothed man horrified, the others were even more terrified. Gooden thought to himself, if he had been the one to receive the broken Kuei 7 murders just now, it would most likely have been a tragedy. It was unimaginable that a third-level giant martial artist could instantly erupt with such terrifying strength. Pooh! Nie Tian spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood and his expression eased up a lot. He looked at the purple-clothed man and said in a cold voice, "Is this your sword of warp and weft? That's all there is to it." The purple-clothed man looked at Nie Tian coldly. The anger in his heart was indescribable. Nie Tian's body trembled as he shook off the bloodstains on his body. Then, he swallowed several spirit pills, and his complexion gradually returned to normal. The purple-clothed man's face was gloomy, almost dripping blood. He seemed to be thinking about something, and his eyes flickered. "You guys can leave." A few seconds later, the purple-clothed man suddenly spoke, unable to hide the disappointment in his tone. He had already said that if Nie Tian could block this move of his, he would be safe for the time being. Now that Nie Tian had really received his sword move, he naturally had to keep his promise. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He laughed and said, "We will meet again, right?" The purple-clothed man's killing move was received by Nie Tian, so it was imaginable how furious he was. However, he still let Nie Tian go at this moment. This calmness and principle made Nie Tian extremely shocked. If it was someone else, they would definitely not let Nie Tian go after seeing him injured. At the very least, someone like Wang Haorui would definitely not let go. The purple-clothed man raised his head and actually lifted his purple robe, revealing a calm and resolute face. He said coldly, "The death order has already been issued, and there is absolutely no possibility of retracting it. The next time we meet, it will be either you or me." Once the death order of the Lin Xian Heaven Pavilion was issued, it would never be retracted until the person who received it died. "All right." Nie Tian smiled indifferently. "We will meet again." Although the purple-clothed man was not a good person, he was definitely an assassin with principles. At the very least, he would keep his promise. "Brother Gooden, let's go." Nie Tian turned around and left. Gooden was still in a daze and did not know how to react. He never thought that an assassin would actually keep his promise. "Senior brother, you can't let him go. He has already been injured by you. If you make a move now, you will definitely be able to kill him." Wang Haorui instantly shouted when he saw that Nie Tian was about to leave. Even his bloodied face was trembling. Now that Nie Tian was injured, it was a good opportunity to kill them. How could he let them go? "If he doesn't make a move, can you stop us?" Nie Tianling looked at Wang Haorui coldly, causing the latter to tremble in fear. However, Wang Haorui quickly calmed himself down and shouted to the guards beside him, "All of you, kill them for me." The 3 hidden guards and a dozen guards looked at each other, eager to give it a try. "Let them go." At this moment, the purple-clothed man spoke coldly. The coldness in his eyes seemed to be able to freeze everything. When he swept his gaze across them, the group of guards were all frightened out of their wits. "Senior brother!" Wang Haorui shouted angrily. "Shut up! If you dare to make another sound, I will kill you!" The purple-clothed man's cold eyes locked onto Wang Haorui and said in a cold voice, "I, Wen Hao, keep my word." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said in a loud voice, "Well said. Assassin Wen Hao, we'll meet again." After saying that, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something. He slightly frowned and said, "The 7-kill sword incantation that you practice not only kills people, but also yourself. If I'm not mistaken, you must be suffering from using the sword warp. The 7-killing intent of the 7-kill sword incantation will definitely shake your origin meridians and injure you. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you want to live longer, give up on the 7-kill sword incantation right now." After saying that, Nie Tian left with Gooden without waiting for Wen Hao's response. Nie Tian. Wen Hao looked in the direction in which Nie Tian and Gooden left. After a while, He spat out a mouthful of blood and coldly curled up the corner of his mouth. I'm looking forward to fighting you next time. Nye Tian was right. Wen Hao's 7-kill sword incantation could kill people, but also himself. The reason why Wen Hao could reach the stage of sword force was because he practiced the 7-kill sword incantation. Compared to other sword incantations, the biggest advantage of the 7-kill sword incantation was that it could help the swordsman condense sword chi faster and nurture the heart of the sword. Furthermore, the 7-kill sword incantation was extremely fierce and terrifying, which matched the temperament of an assassin very well. However, everything had its advantages and disadvantages. When the 7-kill sword incantation condensed sword chi, it would also produce the 7-killing intent. The 7-killing intent would wander in the meridians and cause great damage to a martial artist's origin meridians. Especially when a martial artist used a large-scale sword move, it would cause the 7-killing intent to become even more violent, which would result in a greater backlash. Just now, Wen Hao had created the sword warp and stimulated the brutality of the 7-killing intent, which was why he suddenly spat out blood. However, Wen Hao didn't care about this at all. For an assassin, living longer wasn't that important. Being able to kill people was the most important thing. Seeing Wen Hao suddenly vomiting blood, Wen Haorue couldn't help but step forward and ask, "Senior brother, are you alright?" Chapter 4:15. After Nye Tian and Guden left the Thousand Spring Courtyard, they didn't dare to stop. They ran for dozens of kilometers, and only stopped after confirming that no one was following them. Both of them were panting heavily. "Brother, are you really the Heaven Luo City Lord?" Guden composed himself and looked at Nye Tian suspiciously. The Heaven Luo City Lord Nye Tian was too famous recently, even surpassing the 3 monstrous geniuses of Meru Spirit City. Guden originally thought that the Heaven Luo City Lord would be at least 25 or 26 years old. He didn't expect that he would be a 16 or 17-year-old youth. What was even more unexpected was that he went to the Thousand Spring Courtyard on a whim and met the Heaven Luo City Lord. Everything that happened today was like a dream. What? Don't I look like it? Nye Tian smiled faintly and took out a small bottle as he spoke. He tapped it lightly with his finger and drew out a drop of dragon blood. He opened his mouth and drank it. This time, Nye Tian also brought a dozen drops of dragon blood. Not only was it helpful for his cultivation, but it could also heal his injuries instantly. The blood of an ancient golden dragon was more effective than any elixir. Guden smelled the dense dragon chi in the air. That kind of refreshing feeling caused him to go into a daze. After a while, Guden came to his senses and said, "Brother, is this the legendary dragon blood?" Nye Tian smiled faintly and drew out another drop of dragon blood. He placed it in front of Guden and said, "Brother Guden, you'll know if it's dragon blood after you try it." Gulp, gulp. Guden swallowed his saliva and couldn't react for a long time. Nye Tian actually gave him a drop of dragon blood for him to taste. This guy was too generous. This was dragon blood, not plain water. "Don't you want it?" Nye Tian asked jokingly when he saw Guden's dazed expression. Yes, of course I want it." Guden quickly reacted and swallowed it in one gulp. So good. As the dragon blood entered his body, Guden felt a powerful force surge in his body. It actually had the effect of flushing his yuan meridians and strengthening his bones. He couldn't help but cry out. Nye Tian saw that this guy was so engrossed and sneered. He drew out another drop of dragon blood and said, "If it's good, give me another drop." Guden was completely dumbfounded. His head swelled and he almost floated in the air. After 5 or 6 seconds, Guden finally reacted and swallowed it in one gulp. Damn it, this is dragon blood. The value of dragon blood was definitely higher than a 6th grade elixir. Nye Tian didn't even blink his eyes as he took every drop. Thinking back to Nye Tian's act of buying girls from the butterfly transformation veranda, Guden suddenly felt that it was child's play. Now that he was giving out drops of dragon blood, he was truly generous. After swallowing the 2 drops of dragon blood, Gooden felt that it was a piece of cake for Nye Tian to buy girls at the Butterfly Pavilion. Brother Gooden, do you believe that I'm the Lord of Heaven Luo City now? Nye Tian put away the dragon blood and smiled. Hum. Gooden nodded and said, Brother, you're definitely the Lord of Heaven Luo City. If anyone dares to doubt you, I, Gooden, will be the first to smash his head. At this moment, Gooden completely believed in Nye Tian's identity. Other than the Lord of Heaven Luo City, who else could do this? Gooden heard that Nye Tian obtained more than half of the dragon blood stones in Heaven Luo Mountain, so it wasn't strange that he had more dragon blood. At this moment, Gooden looked at Nye Tian and chuckled. He thought to himself, is he the type of person who is foolish but has a lot of money? Nye Tian, however, didn't pay any attention to Gooden's strange gaze. He took out his spatial ring and emptied its contents. Now was the time to split the spoils. These things were robbed from the Butterfly Pavilion. Nye Tian had promised Gooden that he would split half of the things with him, so he couldn't go back on his word. Gooden saw so many good things suddenly appear in front of him. Essence crystals, spirit pills, spirit weapons, martial art scrolls, martial technique scrolls, etc. They piled up into a small mountain. He was dumbfounded. He didn't expect those rich young masters to have so many good things on them. Boss Nye Tian, so many things, and you're giving me half? Gooden looked at Nye Tian as though he was dreaming, as though he still didn't believe it. At this moment, he didn't dare to call Nye Tian brother. He called Nye Tian boss instead. I said it was too much. Of course, I'll give you half. Nye Tian smiled faintly and didn't waste any words. He directly swung down a stream of sword chi, splitting the treasures that were like a small mountain into 2 piles. He said, Brother Gooden, you choose first. The remaining half is mine. Gooden swallowed and said, There are so many things. I can't take them all. Nye Tian was speechless. Don't you have a space ring? Gooden shook his head. I have one. Nye Tian shook his head and took out another space ring. He thought to himself, this guy is a true energy realm warrior, but he's so poor that it's ridiculous. It's like he came from a slum. Nye Tian gave the space ring to Gooden, but the latter didn't know how to use it. Nye Tian had to teach him how to use it. After a while, the 2 finished splitting the spoils. Boss Nye Tian, it's almost dawn. Where are you going? Do you need my help? Gooden knew the benefits of helping Nye Tian, so he took the initiative to ask. I'm going to find someone. Nye Tian said lightly. Okay, I'll go with you. Gooden smiled. Nye Tian was speechless. This guy was sticking to him. However, it was also good to have him. He was a true energy realm master. Just now, he had sent 1,000 spring courtyard shadow guard flying with a single punch. His strength was so strong that Nye Tian was impressed. With Gooden by his side, if he met a true energy realm master, Nye Tian wouldn't need to use his star souls. Although Nye Tian had the star soul tablet, it would take at least 3 days to inscribe a 3rd order star soul. Moreover, he could only have 4 star souls at the same time. If he met a true energy realm master and had to use his star soul, then even if the star soul tablet was exhausted, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy Nye Tian. I need to improve my strength as soon as possible. Nye Tian sighed in his heart. With his current strength of the giant spirit realm, he could easily deal with any giant spirit realm master. However, against a true energy realm master, he would need to use his star souls. Nye Tian estimated that if he wanted to compete with a true energy realm master, his strength would need to be at least at the giant spirit realm's 7th layer. The true energy of a true energy realm master was too overbearing. Even if Nye Tian used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to compete with it. Okay. Nye Tian decisively agreed to Gooden and turned to leave. Boss Nye Tian, where are we going now? Who are you going to look for? Gooden quickly caught up, chuckling, extremely excited. He had a hunch that if he followed Nie Tian, his future life would definitely be colorful. Chapter 4:16. At the same time that Nie Tian and Gooden left, in the butterfly pavilion of the Wanchun courtyard, Wang Haorui stood where he was. His face was so badly mutilated that no one could see his expression, but his trembling body undoubtedly showed his anger. He really couldn't understand why Wen Hao would let Nie Tian go when he could have killed him. Didn't he know that letting a tiger go back to the mountain would cause endless trouble? Especially a person like Nie Tian, whose strength was so strange that it sent chills down people's spines. Once he grew up, he would definitely be a heaven-defying figure. In Wang Haorui's eyes, the principle of doing what he said was bullsh*t. The most important thing was to kill the opponent. Your Highness. The others in the hall of the butterfly pavilion had already disappeared. A black-clothed secret guard tried to step forward. Your face, trash! Before the secret guard could finish, Wang Haorui roared and suddenly turned around, shouting, "Go! Follow me to the Imperial Advisor's mansion." Imperial Advisor's mansion? The three secret guards exclaimed at the same time when they heard this name. Their faces were full of fear, as if they had heard the most terrifying news. Wang Haorui turned and left. The three secret guards looked at each other, their eyes full of fear. The Imperial Advisor of the Great Chu Empire was known as the most mysterious person in the Great Chu Empire. It was rumored that except for the Emperor, no one had ever seen the true face of the Imperial Advisor. The people of the Great Chu Empire only knew that there was such a person as the Imperial Advisor. As for whether the Imperial Advisor was a man or a woman, tall or short, fat or thin, no one knew. It was said that all those who had seen the Imperial Advisor's true face, except for the Emperor of the Great Chu Empire, were all dead. That was why the three secret guards were so frightened when they heard Wang Haorui say that they were going to the Imperial Advisor's mansion. They didn't even know that the Imperial Advisor's mansion existed. Go! What are you waiting for? Will you only be satisfied when I am killed? Wang Haorui roared when he saw that the three secret guards didn't move. Yes. Even though the three secret guards were very unwilling, they could only follow Wang Haorui. After leaving the Wanchun courtyard, Wang Haorui sat in a carriage. Under the protection of the three secret guards, he came to an extremely remote place outside Chuyang City. The carriage stopped, and what appeared in front of Wang Haorui and the others was a magnificent pavilion. This place was extremely remote and very few people could find it. The sudden appearance of a magnificent pavilion was extremely strange. Above the luxurious pavilion, there was a very powerful aura of a formation, which faintly condensed into a huge face in mid-air. If observed carefully, the face in the sky was very much like that of a fox. A pair of lightning-like eyes emitted a cold light, as if it was overlooking the entire Chuyang City. Your Highness, is this the Imperial Advisor's residence? Wang Haorui walked down from the carriage. One of the hidden guards looked at the loft in front of him and asked in a trembling voice. In the eyes of others, this luxurious pavilion gave off an unreal feeling, like an illusory reflection. Follow me. Wang Haorui didn't answer the dark guard's question. Instead, he walked directly towards the attic. The three hidden guards hesitated for a moment before finally following. Wang Haorui stopped tens of meters away from the attic and shouted in a clear voice, "Teacher, disciple Wang Haorui requests an audience." Teacher? Hearing how Wang Haorui addressed him, the three dark team guards were stunned. Didn't they come to the Imperial Advisor's residence? Why would Wang Haorui call him teacher? They had never heard that the Imperial Advisor was the Crown Prince's teacher. Whoosh! As Wang Haorui's voice fell, a mist suddenly appeared above the door of the attic. Then, the mist gradually became clear. Like a mirror, it reflected a delicate face. It was the face of a young girl who looked to be around 20 years old. Junior brother, what happened to your face? The girl in the mirror could actually see Wang Haorui. Her voice was cold and very real, as if she was talking to a real person. Wang Haorui's face was badly mutilated, and one could even see his bones. It was very frightening that the girl would ask him. It was cut off. Wang Haorui suppressed his anger and said painfully. The girl in the mirror was slightly surprised. Immediately, her gaze fell on the 3 dark team guards behind Wang Haorui. Her voice was still cold. Who are behind you? They are the guards who escorted me here. Wang Haorui bowed and said respectfully. The girl in the mirror raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she was a little angry. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the next moment, without any warning, 3 white lights suddenly shot out from the mirror and disappeared in a flash. Puff, puff, puff. The 3 dark team guards didn't even have the slightest reaction, and their heads were directly cut off. After they fell to the ground, they still maintained a shocked expression. Wang Haorui gulped. Obviously, he was frightened by the sudden scene. He suddenly knelt down and said with a trembling voice, "Senior sister, please spare my life. I know teacher doesn't like outsiders to come here, but I have something urgent to see teacher. I was afraid that there would be danger along the way, so I brought a few dark team guards. Senior sister, please don't tell teacher. I won't dare to do it again." "Do you think teacher doesn't know?" The girl in the mirror sneered and said, "Junior brother, today is not the day to come here. You should know that teacher doesn't like to be disturbed. Go back." Wang Haorui's body stiffened, and he directly kowtowed and said, "Senior sister, please let me see teacher. I really have something very important to report to teacher." The girl in the mirror's face turned slightly cold, and she said coldly, "Wang Haorui, are you sure you want to see teacher?" Wang Haorui's heart inexplicably trembled, and he didn't dare to insist any more. He knew his teacher very well. If teacher was really unhappy, even if he was the great Chu Crown Prince, he would still be killed. "You can leave," the girl in the mirror said indifferently, and then she turned around, and the water mist mirror disappeared. "Yes," Wang Haorui answered, and he didn't even dare to raise his head as he retreated. Wang Haorui came to the carriage and was ready to leave. At this moment, the mirror appeared again, and the girl also appeared. Her voice sounded, "Junior brother, teacher wants to see you." "Okay." Wang Haorui was dazed, and he quickly answered, and walked quickly to the pavilion. The pavilion's protective killing array revealed a small gap, and the door opened automatically. Wang Haorui immediately flashed in. Stepping into the pavilion, a beautiful girl in her 20s appeared in front of Wang Haorui, and it was the face in the mirror. "Follow me," the girl said indifferently. Wang Haorui followed closely behind her, and he was very careful. In the pavilion there was a garden. Hundreds of flowers bloomed, and a stream flowed. It was like a paradise on earth. Under the pavilion in the center of the garden, a long-haired girl stood. She looked to be about 25 or 26 years old, and she wore a red chiffon dress. A black silk belt on her waist showed off her perfect curves vividly. Her facial features were very delicate, exuding a kind of exquisite beauty. There was a blood-red mark between her eyebrows. Coupled with her strange white hair, she exuded a very demonic aura. Chapter 4:17. A moment later, Wang Haorui's figure appeared. Disciple Wang Haorui greets teacher. Tens of meters away, Wang Haorui respectfully knelt down, not daring to approach the lady who was both a teacher and a teacher. "Get up," Tawny's voice sounded. There was no joy or anger in it, but it was full of coldness. As she spoke, she extended her palm. A crystal-clear water droplet appeared in her palm, emitting a strange aura. Splash! With a flick of her finger, the water droplet landed on Wang Haorui's face. Wang Haorui's face changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Flesh and blood regenerated. In the blink of an eye, it returned to normal as if it had never been injured. In fact, it was even more lustrous than before. "Thank you, teacher." Wang Haorui touched his face, unable to conceal his excitement. Tawny suddenly had a hint of doubt on her face. "Who hurt your face?" "Nye Tian." Wang Haorui's face was filled with uncontrollable anger. He recounted everything that had happened between him and Ye Tian. In the end, he said, that kid's strength is too strange. Even senior brother Wen Hao's broken Kuei 7 murders couldn't kill him. A peculiar splendor flickered in Hu Xiaoli's beautiful eyes as she spoke in an indifferent tone. A third-layer giant spirit youth was actually able to escape from the heavenly prison. Not even Wen Hao was able to kill him. His strength is indeed somewhat strange. Wang Haorui nodded heavily. That kid is too arrogant. So, disciple wants to ask teacher to kill him. How dare you? Wang Haorui's voice had yet to fade and Hu Xiaoli had yet to speak when the young girl beside Wang Haorui tenderly shouted, Wang Haorui, you've got guts to actually let teacher kill someone for you. What do you think teacher is? Your killing tool? Disciple doesn't dare. Wang Haorui was so frightened that his legs gave way and he knelt down. Get up. Hu Xiaoli gently waved her hand. She frowned and said, Haorui, you have to remember, you are a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, not the Great Chu's Crown Prince. You are only acting as the Crown Prince, don't be too engrossed in it. Play the role of the Crown Prince? If other people heard Tawny's words, they would definitely be confused. Wang Haorui was clearly the Crown Prince of the Great Chu, so how could he be a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? Tawny's words were a little strange. But, Wang Haorui hesitated for a second, then said, My teacher told me to pretend to be the real Wang Haorui. Since this disciple's current identity is the Crown Prince of Great Chu, if this disciple doesn't react when Lu Zhenyuan is killed, it will arouse suspicion. Wang Haorui was not the Crown Prince, but Tawny had hired someone to impersonate him. If such a matter were to spread out, it would surely cause chaos in the Chu kingdom. Without a doubt, the real Wang Haorui was already dead, and the one in front of him was a fake. Tawny asked someone to disguise as the Crown Prince. She must be plotting something. Tawny frowned slightly and immediately said to the woman beside Wang Haorui, Yu Yao, go with Haorui. Bring this young man back to the Imperial Preceptor's residence. Don't kill him for now. Teacher. The woman named Yu Yao bowed slightly and said with a troubled expression, The person Wang Haorui spoke of accepted senior brother Wen Hao's death order. Even if I don't kill him, senior brother Wen Hao will. Tawny seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes slightly tilted up as she said, I will talk to Wen Hao. This young man can't die yet. Yes. Yu Yao didn't ask why and agreed, then immediately left with Wang Haorui. After the two left, Tawny stretched out her palm, and a water droplet appeared on her palm. The water droplet was actually a sword energy. This sword energy didn't come from anyone else, but from Ye Tian. When Tawny was treating Wang Haorui's face, she had actually extracted the remaining sword energy on his face and preserved it. It's hard to imagine that there is such a pure sword energy in the world. Tawny felt the sword energy in the water droplet, and her delicate face couldn't hide her surprise. Tawny had seen countless swordsmen in the past. She had even paid a visit to a Sword Dao Grandmaster at the Sword Spirit Realm. However, there wasn't a single swordsman whose sword energy was as pure as the sword energy in her hand right now. Moreover, she could clearly feel that there was a very strange power hidden in this sword energy. It was very pure, and it seemed to have a suppressive effect on any kind of power. Tawny murmured, The power contained in this sword energy might be the key to me opening the Eye of Dusk scar. After saying that, she gently raised her finger, and the water droplet dripped into the blood-red mark on her forehead, causing her entire body to tremble inexplicably. It's really effective. Tawny revealed a joyful expression. It turned out that the blood-red mark on her forehead was an innate abnormal pupil called the Eye of Dusk scar. For many years, Tawny had always wanted to open the Eye of Dusk scar. Unfortunately, she hadn't been able to find a way to open the Eye of Dusk scar. Just now, when she was treating Wang Haorui, the Eye of Dusk scar actually reacted to the sword energy. Therefore, Tawny thought that Nye Tion's sword energy would be the key to her opening the Eye of Dusk scar. However, she didn't know that what really worked on the Eye of Dusk scar was not the sword energy, but the power of the stars contained in the sword energy. The power of the stars was the strange power that Tawny sensed. Perhaps I should go and meet this young man personally. An idea suddenly came to Tawny's mind. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and her demonic face looked even more strange. In the largest tea house in Chuyang City, Yangsheng Tea House. Although it had just opened, the tea house's business was extremely good. It was already full of people. At this moment, people were fighting to discuss three major events. One was that Crown Prince Ye's brother-in-law, Lu Zhenyuan, had been killed. The other was that a prisoner had escaped from the heavenly prison yesterday. The last one was that someone had caused a ruckus in the Wanchun courtyard last night. Overnight, these three events had spread throughout the entire Chuyang City, and became the focus of everyone's discussion after a meal. Have you guys heard that Lu Zhenyuan, the brother-in-law of the Crown Prince, a relative of the Emperor, was killed on the street yesterday, and the killer was a young master in his teens? I wonder if it's true? That's nothing. There's something even more amazing. Yesterday, the heavenly prison of the Empire was broken into, and a prisoner had escaped from the heavenly prison. The defense of the heavenly prison is comparable to that of the Imperial Palace. I heard that there are many Imperial secret guards guarding it, and those secret guards are all true Energy Realm martial artists. How could they let someone escape from the heavenly prison? This is nothing. Last night, there was someone who had caused a ruckus in the Wanchun courtyard. I heard that it was a young master of a super big family. He bought the Butterfly Pavilion, and of course, not to mention all the girls, he also robbed everyone in the Butterfly Pavilion. This is really unheard of. The people in the tea house were not tired of talking, and the more they talked, the more excited they became. At this moment, at a corner of the tea house, two figures were sitting there silently, with strange smiles on their faces. Chapter 4:18. Gooden couldn't help but laugh as he listened to everyone's discussion. He suddenly thought of something and said in a low voice, "Boss Nye Tian, you didn't do all these three things, did you?" When they were in the Butterfly Pavilion, Wang Haorui had already recognized Nye Tian and said a few words to him. At that time, Gooden didn't pay much attention to it. Now that he thought about it, he connected everything together. What do you think? Nye Tian smiled strangely. It's really you. Gooden almost screamed. His face was stiff. Who would have thought that in one day, three major events that shook Chuyang City were all done by one person, and the person who did all these things was a young man. In fact, the three events were linked together. In Nye Tian's eyes, they were one thing. If he didn't kill Lu Zhenyuan, he wouldn't have been sent to prison. If he didn't, he wouldn't have escaped from prison. If he didn't escape from prison, he wouldn't have seen Li Jiao being sent to the Thousand Spring Courtyard, and then the chaos in the Thousand Spring Courtyard wouldn't have happened. All in all, it was cause and effect. Nye Tian didn't care about Gooden's surprise. His eyes were still looking out of the window. They were waiting for Duanmulu and Gu Wuyo to appear. The Sunrise Tea House was located at the intersection of the main roads of Chuyang City. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, Gu Wuyo had to pass by here every day, so Nye Tian chose to wait for her here. The people we're looking for are here. After a while, Nye Tian looked out of the tea house. Two figures appeared. It was Duanmulu and Gu Wuyo. Boss Nye Tian, is that your disciple and his wife? Gooden saw Duanmulu and Gu Wuyo walking over side by side. He felt that the two were not weak, and they were both young and talented. He couldn't help but be surprised. What do you think? They're a good match, right? Nye Tian raised his eyebrows, looking a little proud. Gooden frowned and said, Boss Nye Tian, you're not lying to me, are you? How could there be a teacher who was weaker than a student? Your disciple and disciple's wife are both at the giant spirit realm at such a young age. Especially your disciple's wife, she's actually at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm. This is too ridiculous. Gooden had a doubtful look on his face, thinking that Nye Tian was teasing him. Even Duanmulu's strength was 1 level higher than Nye Tian's. Such a master-disciple relationship was indeed hard to convince. Looks like I need to increase my strength as soon as possible, Nye Tian said in his heart. Then, he smiled strangely and said, Brother Gooden, can you help me test their strength? Gooden didn't know Gu Wuyo, which meant that he had just arrived at Chuyang City. If he was from Chuyang City, it was impossible for him not to know Gu Wuyo. Nye Tian wanted to see how strong Duanmulu was now. At the same time, he was also curious about Gu Wuyo. He only knew that Gu Wuyo's strength was at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm, but he didn't know the latter's true battle prowess. Presumably, since he was able to become the commander of the Great Chu Empire's Imperial Guard, his strength must not be bad. It's not good, right? Gooden looked awkward and said, I don't even know her, and from the way she's dressed, she seems to be a general. Wouldn't I be courting death if I went to look for trouble? Gooden felt that Nye Tian must be lying to him. He thought that Duanmulu and Gu Wuyo must be Nye Tian's enemies. Otherwise, why would he test their strength for no reason? Gooden thought that if he went to fight with that woman, he would attract countless imperial guards. Wouldn't he be dumbfounded? Therefore, he couldn't go. He definitely couldn't go. Brother Gooden, I won't ask you to help me for free. How about a drop of dragon blood? Nye Tian's lips curled up slightly as he said. Gulp. When Gooden heard Nye Tian mention dragon blood, he thought of the feeling of consuming dragon blood previously, and it made his blood boil. He stood up abruptly and said, Deal. Seeing Gooden's murderous look, Nye Tian hurriedly reminded him, Don't hurt them. Gooden was stunned for a moment. Nye Tian asked him to test the strength of others, but he couldn't hurt them. What did this mean? Okay. He didn't think too much and agreed directly. Then, he strode out of the tea house and came to the middle of the street. At this time, there were many people on the street. Gooden stood arrogantly in the crowd and shouted, Get out of my way! His voice was like thunder, scaring the bystanders to make way. Gu Wuyo and Duanmulu walked over side by side. They saw a strong man standing in the middle of the road not far in front of them, and he even shouted loudly. His arrogance made people's hair stand on end. The two stopped at the same time and locked their eyes on the strong man in front of them. Who are you? How dare you behave atrociously in my Chuyang City? Gu Wuyo directly stepped forward, not concealing her anger at all. She was the commander of the Imperial Guards, responsible for the safety of Chuyang City. Someone actually dared to be arrogant in front of her. Wasn't he courting death? The crowd recognized Gu Wuyo, and their faces revealed a strange expression as they started discussing. It's General Gu. This idiot is going to be unlucky. This guy's roar is earth-shattering. And look at his body, his arms are thicker than my thighs. He must be very strong. Humph. So what if he's strong? He dared to be arrogant in front of General Gu. This guy must have eaten the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard. Let's see how he dies later. General Gu can't tolerate sand in his eyes. The crowd discussed, and they all looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. Gooden heard the discussion, and the muscles on his face twitched. He thought to himself, this woman can't be the only female general of the Great Chu, right? Boss Nye Tian is going to make things difficult for me this time. But things had already come to this, and Gooden couldn't retreat. He could only shout loudly and arrogantly said, I want to behave atrociously, what can you do to me? You have to pay the price for behaving atrociously. Before Gu Wuyo could react, Duanmulu, who was beside her, let out a deep roar. He held the 8 extremities Kunwa sword in his hand, and the heavy sword let out a buzzing sound as it stabbed toward Gooden. Duanmulu was anxious about how to let Nye Tian meet the emperor, and he was very anxious. Now that he saw an arrogant guy provoking him, he couldn't stand it. As soon as he made his move, he used the move of Extremity 9 Extremes, Dark Cloud Waning Moon. Boom! A majestic sword shadow appeared and pressed toward Gooden. Head Duanmu, be careful! Gu Wuyo cried out in surprise. She knew that Gooden was very strong, and even stronger than her. It was very dangerous for Duanmu Lu to attack so rashly. Head Duanmu was Gu Wuyo's new nickname for Duanmu Lu. It seemed that the two of them were progressing well. Good move. Gooden laughed and clenched his hand into a fist. He used his flesh and blood to take on Duanmu Lu's attack. Bam! The sword shadow collided with the fist shadow, and a dull sound was produced. Duanmu Lu felt a huge force rebound from his wrist, and the shock numbed his hand. He was also forced to take a few steps back. Gooden's body also froze, and he frowned. He didn't expect that Duanmu Lu, who was only at the 4th tier of the giant spirit realm, could suddenly erupt with such power. It was almost no weaker than an 8th or 9th tier giant spirit realm martial artist. Chapter 419. Frost Extreme Dust. Duanmu Lu was pushed back by Godan's punch. The arrogance in his heart was aroused. With a deep roar, the giant spirit true body appeared and the second form of the ultimate 9 extremes was executed. The powerful and heavy giant sword pressed down like a mountain. The crowd gasped. They did not expect this 15 or 16-year-old boy to have such strength. F***ck. Godan exclaimed when he felt the powerful aura of the 8 extremities Kunwa sword. Immediately, the origin energy in his body surged, and a giant black ape that was dozens of meters long appeared behind him. The giant black ape roared to the sky and raised both its arms to block the 8 extremities Kunwa sword. With a loud bang, Duanmu Lu was pushed back a few steps. True origin energy. He steadied his body, and saw the thin layer of earth chi on the giant ape's body. He could not help but frown. He did not expect the brute in front of him to be a true origin realm martial artist. Pfft! Duanmu Lu was rebounded by Godan's Black King Kong Yuan spirit. His chest tightened, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Head Duanmu, are you okay? Gu Wuyo stepped forward and looked at Godan coldly. I'm fine. Duanmu Lu nodded slightly and looked up at Godan. He felt strange. This guy could have severely injured him. Why did he go easy on me? Gu Wuyo was angry. She shouted, "You deserve to die." After saying that, a gust of wind blew, and a scarlet whip whizzed out. It was like a blood-red python, and it attacked Godan. Huh! Godan was slightly stunned. In an instant, Qi Shao Feihong hit the Black King Kong's face, leaving a bloody mark. Gu Wuyo's whip Yuan spirit was called Qi Shao Feihong. It was very domineering, and its aura was even more terrifying than a sword spirit martial artist. What a fierce aura! Nie Tian was hiding in the crowd. He could not help but admire Gu Wuyo's aura. Given his current strength, he might not be a match for Gu Wuyo if he did not use his Star Souls and the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. You! Gooden was annoyed by the whip, but before he could say anything, Gu Wuyo struck him again. All of a sudden, the Scarlet Firmament Flying Goose became perfectly straight like a long rod and attacked King Kong's face. You little girl! You're only at the 9th level of the giant spiritual realm. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Godan furiously roared. Shortly after, he sent a palm strike out. A terrifying palm force fiercely pounced out. The surging force was like a vast ocean. Gu Wuyo's Scarlet Firmament Soaring Goose immediately became sluggish. It was unable to advance any further and was sent flying back by the huge force. Watch out, Worryless! Duanmu Lu cried out in alarm. He was just about to make a move when he felt a sharp sword chi whistling towards him. The sword chi whistled and actually transformed into a sword shield in the air, blocking Eggface's violent palm strike. Gu Wuyo was slightly taken aback. She suddenly felt that this sword chi was very familiar. General Gu, let's talk in the tea house. While she was still bewildered, Nie Tian's voice rang out in her mind. Gu Wuyo was shocked. She looked around, but she did not see Nie Tian's figure. She looked at Go Dan, who had also regained his composure. He looked at her with a hint of anger. Originally, he came to test the waters. He did not expect his face to be whipped red. How could Go Dan not be angry? With Gu Wuyo's intelligence, she immediately understood. She said in a cold tone, "Bring us to him." Look for him? Go Dan was stunned. He did not react for a moment. Look for the fellow behind you, Gu Wuyo reprimanded. And, although Go Dan was unwilling, he still nodded. After a while, Gu Wuyo and the other two appeared at the entrance of a VIP room in the tea house. "Teacher!" Duanmu Lu shouted excitedly when he saw Nie Tian sitting in the room leisurely. "You're here." Nie Tian could not help but smile awkwardly when he saw Gu Wuyo's angry face. F***ck. It's really your disciple. Go Dan could not help but shout when he heard Duanmu Lu call Nie Tian teacher. He then turned to look at Gu Wuyo and frowned. "So your boss Nie Tian's disciple's wife?" "Disciple's wife." Gu Wuyo was slightly stunned. She immediately reacted and frowned. "Teacher." Duanmu Lu's face and neck turned red again. "Nie Tian City Lord, I really did not expect you to escape from the heavenly prison." Gu Wuyo stared at Nie Tian. Her eyes were filled with surprise and anger. She was surprised that Nie Tian was able to escape from the heavenly prison. She was angry that Nie Tian had asked Go Dan to test her strength. Gu Wuyo still did not know that the heavenly prison had been breached and that the Wan Chun courtyard was in chaos. "I really did not expect Duanmu Lu to tell you my identity," Nie Tian said with a faint smile. Gu Wuyo immediately called Duanmu Lu Nie Tian City Lord. It was obvious that Duanmu Lu had already revealed his identity. Actually, Nie Tian already knew that with Duanmu Lu's honesty, he would definitely tell Gu Wuyo everything. Fortunately, Gu Wuyo was not someone with ulterior motives. Otherwise, Nie Tian and the others would be in danger. "Looks like I need to change my name and identity. The Lord of Heaven Luo City is too big of a target. It's easy to attract attention," Nie Tian said in his heart. Gu Wuyo's anger had not subsided. She said, "Leader Duanmu and I thought of a way for you to meet His Majesty, but you actually hid here and drank tea." "Wuyo, don't talk about teacher like that." Without waiting for Nie Tian to speak, Duanmu Lu explained, "Teacher must have a deep meaning for doing this." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "My disciple still understands me." "Deep meaning my ass," Gu Wuyo said in a bad mood. She directly picked up a cup of tea and drank it in one gulp as if it was cold water. Go Dan was stunned. What was the relationship between Nie Tian and these two people? Why was one holding him up and the other scolding him? Nie Tian did not care too much and asked, "General Gu, have you thought of a way for me to meet Great Chu Emperor? You still want to see His Majesty?" Gu Wuyo was stunned and said, "You have already escaped from the heavenly prison. Why do you still want to see His Majesty?" Gu Wuyo didn't know how Nie Tian had escaped from the imperial prison, but she felt that since he had already escaped, why didn't he just leave? Why did he have to see the emperor? "I had no choice but to escape from the heavenly prison, and I also had no choice but to see the emperor. Please help me, General Gu," Nie Tian said kindly. "Wuyo, help teacher and let him see your emperor," Duanmu Lu said. Nie Tian was also speechless. Thinking back to his previous life, it was always people who knelt and begged to see him. Now, he had to beg for help just to see the emperor of 3,000 small worlds. How embarrassing! As expected, Duanmu Lu's request was much more useful than Nie Tian's. Chapter 420. Second Prince. Nie Tian was slightly startled and asked, "Who is this?" Gu Wuyo sighed and said, "His Highness the Second Prince is His Majesty's second legitimate son and the only one in Great Chu who can compete with His Highness the Crown Prince. The Second Prince has a high status and is the commander of the Great Chu Imperial Guard. Moreover, he is extremely talented and proficient in scheming. He is very good at winning people's hearts." Many of Great Chu's nobles have attached themselves to the second prince. Nie Tian faintly smiled and said, "According to what you said, this second prince should be much better than that bullshit crown prince. Then why didn't your emperor make him crown prince? Instead, he made an arrogant fool the crown prince. Your emperor shouldn't be that stupid to hand over an empire to an almost idiotic son. According to Gu Wuyo, this second prince should be hundreds or even thousands of times better than Crown Prince Wang Haorui. Although these empires would consider choosing the eldest legitimate son, if the eldest legitimate son wasn't good enough and the other princes were very outstanding, they would still consider choosing the other princes as the crown prince. This was the situation in Great Chu. The second prince was clearly much better than the crown prince, and he was also a legitimate son. If the Great Chu emperor had half a brain, he would also choose the second prince as the crown prince. Alas! Gu Wuyo sighed softly and said, 3 years ago, His Majesty indeed considered making the second prince the crown prince. However, for some reason, His Majesty suddenly changed his mind and announced that the first prince would be the crown prince. The other powers didn't object? Nie Tian asked. The crown prince of a great empire was definitely a matter of great importance to the empire's fate. There would definitely be interference from the various powers of the empire. Just like in Blue Cloud Empire, Lan Bingchen and Lan Binji's struggle for crown prince had to consider the attitudes of Blue Cloud Commerce, Alchemist Guild, Tyrant Cloud Academy, and other powers. The Great Chu Empire was far stronger than Blue Cloud Empire, so its internal power struggle was bound to be more complicated. The other powers would definitely not approve of such a suicidal decision if the emperor suddenly chose an incapable and idiotic prince as the crown prince. Sigh. Gu Wuyo sighed again. You might not know this, but the crown prince wasn't like this 3 years ago. At that time, although the crown prince's talents were mediocre, he was kind to the people and had great power. He was even more popular than the second prince. However, after he became the crown prince, he seemed to have changed into a completely different person. He became arrogant and despotic, doing whatever he wanted, allowing his subordinates to do whatever they wanted. Anyone who opposed him was killed by him. Hearing this, Nie Tian furrowed his brows and said, "This is too outrageous. He hasn't even become the emperor. He's only the crown prince and his ruthless character is already revealed. If he became the emperor, wouldn't he be even more brutal and tyrannical? The emperor is not stupid. Can't he just change the crown prince?" Sigh. Gu Wuyo sighed again and again. Wrinkles appeared on her small face as she said, "After His Majesty appointed the crown prince 3 years ago, he retired to the harem and let His Majesty the crown prince govern the country. In the past year, His Majesty has rarely appeared. Even I haven't seen His Majesty for a long time." Upon hearing this, Nie Tian's frown deepened. Why did he smell the scent of a conspiracy? The emperor suddenly appointed the crown prince, and then suddenly retired to the harem? The crown prince's character suddenly changed. With so many people suddenly gathered together, it seemed a little strange. Nie Tian asked again. Even if the emperor can't change the crown prince with the crown prince's ability, a second prince should be able to make him obedient. Will the second prince let him be the crown prince peacefully? The crown prince was immoral and caused a lot of complaint. It would be fine if the other princes were incompetent. However, the second prince that Gu Wuyo mentioned was obviously not simple. How could he allow the crown prince to be so arrogant? He could just join forces with a few major forces and force the crown prince to abdicate. Nie Tian had interacted with Wang Haorui a few times and could clearly see that this guy was absolutely brainless. It was impossible for him to defeat the second prince. He was not at all like the powerful crown prince that Gu Wuyo had described. Gu Wuyo shook his head slightly and said, "The crown prince is deeply supported by the imperial advisor. With the imperial advisor protecting him, the other princes can't touch him." Imperial advisor? Nie Tian was stunned and asked, "Who is this person?" Gu Wuyo said, "The imperial advisor is the most mysterious person in Great Chu. He came to Great Chu 3 years ago, and besides the emperor, no one has seen the imperial advisor's true face." 3 years ago? Nie Tian couldn't help but be vigilant when he heard this time. This was because he remembered that the emperor had appointed the crown prince 3 years ago, and this imperial advisor had also appeared 3 years ago. It couldn't be a coincidence, right? Nie Tian never believed in coincidences. He believed that anything that looked like a coincidence had a hidden meaning. From what Gu Wuyo had said, Nie Tian felt that there was a thick smell of conspiracy. There were many noble families, and the kinship of the royal family was the faintest. Who knew what kind of dirty deals were hidden behind the heavy curtains of the palace? "General Gu, I want to ask you something." Nie Tian suddenly thought of something. "Please speak, Nie Tian City Lord." Gu Wuyo's attitude towards Nie Tian became more respectful. "Have you heard of an organization called Lin Xian Pavilion?" Nie Tian asked. Lin Xian Pavilion. When Gu Wuyo heard this name, an uncontrollable anger appeared in his eyes. His entire body was burning with anger. Nie Tian, Duanmulu, and Guden were stunned. They didn't know what was wrong with Gu Wuyo. Gu Wuyo didn't say anything and took out a token. Death token. Nie Tian looked at the token in Gu Wuyo's hand. It was actually the death token of Lin Xian Pavilion. Moreover, it was made of silver. It was undoubtedly a silver rank death token. "You're also chosen by the death god?" Nie Tian's face sank. A token that was identical to the one in Gu Wuyo's hand appeared in his hand. The command medallion in Nie Tian's hand had been sent by Wen Hao. It was just that the latter hadn't expected that Nie Tian would be able to block his deadly sword strike. Therefore, Nie Tian had temporarily escaped death. However, where did the death token in Gu Wuyo's hand come from? The look in Gu Wuyo's eyes grew strange as he asked Nie Tian, "Where did you get your death medallion?" Nie Tian was stunned. He guessed that Gu Wuyo thought he was an assassin from Lin Xian Pavilion. He quickly explained, "I offended someone previously. That person hired an assassin from Lin Xian Pavilion to kill a bronze rank assassin. Now, the death token has been upgraded to silver rank." Gu Wuyo stared at Nie Tian's eyes and finally confirmed that the latter wasn't lying. A pained expression appeared on her face as though she recalled something. After a long time, she said, "The death token in my hand was obtained from my parents' corpses. They died in front of me with this token in their hand." Nie Tian's eyes changed slightly. He was quite surprised. Without a doubt, Gu Wuyo's parents died under the hands of Lin Xian Pavilion's assassins. Chapter 421. Gu Wuyo's face was gloomy as she suppressed the anger in her heart. Her parents died on the battlefield. She was only a 4-year-old child back then, and still couldn't understand the true meaning of the word death. Ever since she was young, she had experienced unimaginable pain to grow to her current level. Along the way, she had never forgotten what the death god's decree meant. She would definitely investigate the tragic deaths of her parents and avenge them. Nie Tian looked at Gu Wuyo and felt strange. The Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion was an extremely mysterious assassin organization. It was impossible for them to kill ordinary people. This undoubtedly meant that Gu Wuyo's parents' identity was extraordinary. The person who could invite the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion to take action was also not an ordinary person. A moment later, Gu Wuyo finally calmed down. She put away the death token and asked, "Why did you suddenly ask about the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion?" Although Nie Tian was being pursued by the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, this matter clearly had nothing to do with the matter they were discussing. It was strange that Nie Tian suddenly mentioned the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nie Tian unleashed his divine sense to scan the surroundings. After confirming that there was no one suspicious, he took a glance at Guden and said, "If I told you that the crown prince of the Chu dynasty might be from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, would you believe me?" The great Chu crown prince was from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. The moment Nye Tian said that, Gu Wuyo, Duanmulu, and Guden were all stunned. The crown prince of a first-rate empire and the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion's assassin were like heaven and earth. If they were said to be the same person, no one would believe it. Boss Nye Tian, your joke isn't funny at all. Guden was the first to react. He chuckled and said, I heard that the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion is the third-ranked underground organization in the 3,000 small worlds and the first-ranked assassin organization. There was even a red-cloved elder of the Alchemist Guild who died in the hands of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion's assassin. Even the Alchemist Guild couldn't do anything to the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. If the Crown Prince of Great Chu is an assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, then the entire Great Chu Empire will be in danger. Gu Wuyo's expression didn't look good either. He looked at Nye Tian cold and said, Nye Tian City Lord, I know you're the teacher of Duanmu and the City Lord of Heaven Luo City, but you shouldn't speak nonsense without any proof. Duanmu Lu looked at Nye Tian and said nothing. After all, what Nye Tian had just told them was too important. The Crown Prince of the Great Chu Empire was an assassin of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. If it was really like this, then regardless of whether the Great Chu Empire had anything to do with this matter or not, it would still infuriate the Alchemist Guild and the four great clans. The forces of the underworld had always been at odds with the four great clans, the Apothecary Guild, the Martial Gathering, and the Merchant Alliance. If it was confirmed that the Crown Prince of the Great Chu Empire was an assassin of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, then the four great clans and the other forces could completely annihilate the Great Chu Empire. In the end, the various forces would divide the Great Chu Empire. Even the Battle Cloud sect behind the Great Chu Empire might be implicated. This was like pulling a hair and the whole body would be affected. Gu Wuyo was a citizen of the Great Chu Empire, so he naturally didn't want to see such a thing happen. Nye Tian's expression was indifferent as he said, Currently, I don't have any concrete evidence. But I saw with my own eyes that the Crown Prince of the Great Chu Empire addressed the person who sent me the Death God order as senior brother. Moreover, the Crown Prince is extremely afraid of that assassin called Wen Hao, and he completely behaved like a subordinate. Even if the Crown Prince of the Great Chu Empire isn't an assassin of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, he definitely has a close relationship with the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Guden seemed to have thought of something and said, I think I heard it too. Gu Wuyo saw that Nye Tian's expression was solemn, and it was obviously impossible for him to lie. He couldn't help but frown as he asked, If what you said is true, would the Crown Prince be so stupid? To expose such a thing in front of you? Nye Tian said, Maybe he was too impatient, or maybe he thought that I would die without a doubt, or maybe he didn't know that I had already received the Death God's order. Every possibility is valid, and I'm absolutely not lying. At that time in the butterfly transformation veranda, Wang Haorui's face was cut off by Nye Tian. That was why he shouted it out. Moreover, he thought that Nye Tian didn't know Wen Hao's identity. Who would have thought that Wen Hao would reveal his identity himself? It could only be said that Wen Hao was too confident and thought that he could kill Nye Tian. But in the end, he didn't let Nye Tian know such an important piece of confidence. Gu Wuyo's expression turned heavy. She lowered her head and pondered, not speaking for a long time. The news that the Crown Prince was a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion was too shocking. She needed time to digest it. In fact, Nye Tian was also speechless. He just casually saved a girl who was being bullied. Who would have thought that so many things would come out of it? However, he also knew that with the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion's ability, no matter how careful he would definitely be found. It was the #1 assassin organization in the 3,000 small worlds. If they couldn't even find the person they wanted to kill, they would be too weak. But now, things seemed to have become more complicated. A first-rate empire had inexplicably gotten involved. It would probably be a little difficult to handle. There was also that mysterious imperial tutor. He was probably a very troublesome person. Nie Tian vaguely felt that all of this might be related to this imperial tutor. Originally, the Great Chu Empire was doing quite well. But 3 years ago, the imperial tutor appeared, and everything went wrong. If there's a chance, I must meet this imperial tutor, Nie Tian said in his heart. I believe you. Gu Wuyo calmed down and looked at Nie Tian. If the crown prince is really related to the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, what do you want to do? Kill him, Nie Tian said without hesitation. His face was expressionless. Kill him? Gu Wuyo was slightly stunned. Do you know how much trouble killing the crown prince of a first-rate empire will cause? I don't. Nie Tian shook his head. Then, he smiled confidently. I never look for trouble, but if trouble comes to me, I won't be afraid. Gu Wuyo looked at Nie Tian speechlessly. His eyes seemed to be saying, You saved someone for no reason and killed Lu Zhenyuan for no reason. Aren't you looking for trouble? As far as Gu Wuyo was concerned, Nie Tian was just someone who had nothing better to do and was looking for trouble. However, Nie Tian didn't think so. Lu Zhenyuan's evil deeds originally had nothing to do with him. But now that he encountered it, trouble came knocking on his door. If left unchecked, Nie Tian would feel as if there was a thorn in his back, and he would feel uncomfortable all over. Moreover, he was here to gain experience. Provoking some arrogant fellows who thought they were big shots, and then getting rid of them was also a good experience. Right now, Nie Tian was in too much trouble. Having Wang Haorui on his side wouldn't make a difference. All right. Gu Wuyo thought for a moment and made a decision. I'll bring you to see the second prince now. As for whether he's willing to help, it's up to you. Chapter 422. As long as Gu Wuyo brought Nie Tian to see the second prince, Nie Tian was confident that he could convince the latter to help. The enmity between Nie Tian and the crown prince was basically irreconcilable. Given the second prince's intelligence, he would definitely try to rope Nie Tian in. After all, Nie Tian had the title of Tianluo City's lord. Nie Tian and the others left the Rising Sun Tea House and went straight to the Xian Palace. Nie Tian learned from Gu Wuyo that the crown prince's name was Wang Haorui, and the second prince's name was Wang Haoshuan. What surprised Nie Tian was that the second prince, Wang Haoshuan, used to be the #1 genius in the North Sea region's genius ranking. However, he was over 30 years old, so his name was removed from the genius ranking. Nie Tian didn't expect the second prince to be so old. He thought the second prince should be in his 20s. The second prince is already over 30 years old. Isn't Wang Haorui even older? Why does he look so young? Nie Tian was puzzled. When he met Wang Haorui previously, Nie Tian thought he was 25 or 26 years old. Now, he should be less than 40 years old. He was already 40 years old, but he was still so arrogant. It could only be said that Wang Haorui had lived his life like a dog. After a while, the four of them arrived at the magnificent Xian Palace. The guards of the Xian Palace recognized Gu Wuyo and didn't stop them. They waited in the hall with a servant. The Xian Palace is indeed impressive. Nie Tian sat in the hall and couldn't help but sigh. Ever since he stepped into the Xian Palace, he already sensed the presence of several strong auras. Obviously, these people were the guards who were hiding near the Xian Palace. Those auras were much stronger than the guards of the Thousand Spring Courtyard. They were almost as strong as the true Energy Realm martial artists guarding the prison. Nie Tian City Lord, His Highness Xian Palace has a strange habit. He doesn't like people looking at him. You must be careful when you talk to His Highness later. Gu Wuyo reminded Nie Tian. After all, they were here to ask for help, so it was best not to be too arrogant. Don't let others see? Nie Tian was stunned. He smiled and said, Is there *T on my face? I don't want anyone to see me. Gu Wuyo was speechless. If he had known this, he wouldn't have reminded this guy. Nie Tian had seen many big shots, and he had even seen people with the same eccentricities as Wang Haoshuan. In his previous life, Emperor Dainite didn't like people looking at him when they were talking, so he could only lower his head and talk to him. In fact, this was a method of deterrence used by those in a higher position against those in a lower position. If Heavenly Emperor Chen-yong really couldn't let anyone look at him, then wouldn't the other 9 emperors of the Heaven Realm, or even the 9 emperors Supreme Snow Empress, start fighting if they saw him? In his previous life, Nye Tian was the only person in the Dainite sacred realm who dared to look Emperor Dainite in the eye. Even Luo Chenhuan's daughter, Luo Xian, rarely dared to look him in the eye. Because of his dislike for Luo Chenhun, Nye Tian did not have a good impression of Wang Haoshuan. This guy was probably a power maniac, and liked to be looked up to and feared by others. At this time, a servant walked over and said to Gu Wuyo, General Wuyo, His Highness Xian Monarch is at the martial arts field. He invites you over. All right. Gu Wuyo had a sense of propriety and said, Please lead the way. Meeting guests at the martial arts field. Your Highness Xian Monarch really has a lot of eccentricities. Nye Tian curled his lips slightly and said teasingly. That servant looked at Nye Tian and seemed to be very dissatisfied with the latter, but he didn't say anything. After a while, Nye Tian and the others arrived at the martial arts field of the Xian monarch's residence. This martial arts field was much bigger than the martial arts field of the Nye Tian city lord's residence. At a glance, it was at least tens of kilometers in radius. It was hard to imagine how big the entire Xian monarch's residence was. Ha 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 ha, General Gu, what a rare guest. Several figures walked over. The leader was a young man who looked to be about 25 or 26 years old. He had a strong aura around him, and when he laughed heartily, he gave off a refreshing and amiable feeling. However, the martial artists in green behind this young man all lowered their heads, appearing extremely respectful. This young man was naturally the renowned Great Chu's second prince, Wang Haoshuan. Gu Wuyo only swept a glance over Wang Haoshuan, then immediately bowed and said directly, Wuyo doesn't visit without a cause. Coming here this time, I really have something to ask of your Highness Xian Monarch. Guden and Duanmu Lu both knew that Wang Haoshuan didn't like being stared at by others. They both looked into the distance and didn't say anything. Only Nye Tian stared straight at Wang Haoshuan, actually sizing him up without the slightest scruple. Wang Haoshuan's appearance was somewhat similar to Wang Haorui's, but he appeared more resolute than the latter. His gaze was also deeper. When Wang Haoshuan saw someone actually sizing him up without the slightest scruple, he couldn't help feeling somewhat angry. His originally warm and genial face immediately darkened. However, Nye Tian didn't care at all. It was as if he didn't see it at all. He had an attitude of, if you don't let me look, I'll look anyway. At this moment, Nye Tian was somewhat astonished in his heart. He didn't expect that Wang Haoshuan's strength was actually at the 3rd level veritable essence realm. Wang Haoshuan should have just passed 30 years old, which meant that he had just been removed from the North Sea genius role. Nye Tian estimated that his combat prowess was absolutely above Long Sky's. At the very least, they were on the same level. As the former number 1 genius of the North Sea genius, his talent and strength were naturally very strong. Insolence! Who are you? How dare you be so rude? Before Wang Haoshuan said anything, the few cultivators behind him already couldn't hold it in anymore. One of them roared angrily. Nye Tian glanced at this person. It was actually a 1st level veritable essence realm cultivator. He immediately put on a puzzled and innocent expression and said with a faint smile, What did I do? How was I rude? Stinking brat, don't you know? When talking to His Highness Xian Monarch, you are not allowed to stare. You have to lower your head when speaking, that cultivator roared angrily. Nye Tian smiled faintly but continued to stare at Wang Haoshuan. He said, Is His Highness Xian Monarch's face that ugly? So ugly that people can't look at it? You're courting death. That cultivator was instantly enraged and actually wanted to make a move. Stop. Wang Haoshuan spoke at this moment. He suddenly looked at Nye Tian and laughed. He said, "Everyone says that Heaven Luo City Lord Nye Tian is extremely arrogant. Seeing him today, it is indeed not a lie. Compared to Xian Monarch, you are far inferior." Nye Tian smiled faintly. There was no lack of sarcasm in his tone. It was not strange that Wang Haoxuan knew Nye Tian's identity. Nye Tian's identity was already exposed when he was at the butterfly transformation veranda. Moreover, so many big things happened in Chuyang City yesterday, and they were all related to the Crown Prince. Wang Haoxuan would definitely investigate. Nye Tian killed Lu Zhenyuan and was sent to the heavenly prison by Gu Wuyo. Then, he escaped and wreaked havoc in the Myriad Spring Courtyard. Wang Haoxuan had already investigated this series of events clearly. At this moment, Gu Wuyo suddenly appeared with a few people. With Wang Haoxuan's intelligence, he could naturally guess that this arrogant young man in front of him was the Heaven Luo City Lord who had done a series of crazy things, Nye Tian. Heaven Luo City Lord Nye Tian. The few people behind Wang Haoxuan were all stunned. They did not expect that this 16-year-old young man in front of them was actually the famous Heaven Luo City Lord. Previously, the dragon blood martial meet had caused a huge commotion. Almost everyone in the 3,000 small worlds knew the name Nye Tian. Chapter 423. Facing the sudden provocation, Nye Tian smiled without saying a word. "I didn't think that the champion of the dragon blood martial meet would be a third-level giant ant. Can you take one of my punches?" Another person behind Wang Haoxuan continued to provoke. "You." Duanmu Lu couldn't take it anymore and was about to speak, but he was stopped by Nye Tian. Nye Tian raised his eyebrows and looked at Wang Haoxuan, saying directly, "If your Highness Xian King wants to test my strength, just say it. There's no need to be sarcastic." And Wang Haoxuan was slightly taken aback. He clearly didn't expect his intentions to be seen through by Nye Tian. He immediately smiled and said, "Nye Tian City Lord accepts the test." Wang Haoxuan wanted to use his subordinates to test Nye Tian's strength. Nye Tian's reputation was great. Now that he had a conflict with the Crown Prince and suddenly came to the Xian King residence, Wang Haoxuan naturally thought that Nye Tian was here to seek refuge with him. Since he was here to seek refuge, then he naturally had to look at his strength. Logically speaking, Nye Tian was the champion of the Dragon Blood martial meet. It was rumored that the Dragon Blood martial meet attracted the geniuses of the entire Nanshan region. There were even geniuses from the other 3 regions and Xumi Ling capital participating. Nye Tian was able to become the champion under such circumstances. His strength was naturally not to be underestimated. But Wang Haoxuan saw that Nye Tian only had the strength of a third-level giant, so he couldn't help but have some doubts. So he wanted to test him. How could this kind of small trick be hidden from Nye Tian's eyes? "Of course I accept." Nye Tian smiled faintly. He glanced at the 3 people behind Wang Haoxuan and said provocatively, "I don't know if you will come one by one or all together. I'm in a bit of a hurry. Let's all come together." All together? Those martial artists were taken aback at the same time. Nye Tian only had the strength of a third-level giant, but the 3 of them were first-level true essence martial artists. Normally speaking, let alone together, any one of them could absolutely beat the shit out of a third-level giant martial artist with a casual move. Nye Tian was fighting 3 people at the same time. This kind of arrogance, wasn't it too arrogant? Gu Wuyo also looked at Nye Tian and thought to himself, "This guy loves to play with fire so much. He will burn himself sooner or later." However, Duanmu Lu and Guden's reactions were calm. Duanmu Lu was Nye Tian's disciple, and he had witnessed the latter's astonishing methods. Naturally, he was not worried. In the butterfly transformation veranda, Guden had seen Nye Tian single-handedly resist the attacks of 4 true essence first-level martial artists. Even the silver-rank assassins of the Lin Xian Heaven Pavilion had not been able to kill him. Therefore, it should be very easy for him to deal with these three martial artists at the first level of true element. Nye Tian was full of provocation. Naturally, he wasn't trying to be a hero blindly. Since Wang Haoshuan wanted to see his strength, he had to give him a shock. Only when the shock was big enough would it be easier to raise the conditions. Oh! Wang Haoshuan found it strange and said to the three people behind him, "Since the Nye Tian city lord is so confident in his strength, then the three of you will play with him. Remember, you must have a sense of propriety. It would be bad if you hurt the Nye Tian city lord." Originally, he only wanted to let one person test Nye Tian's strength. However, Nye Tian suggested 3 people at the same time. Of course, it was better to be respectful than to comply. "Go ahead." Nye Tian could obviously hear that when Wang Haoshuan said, "have a sense of propriety," he was actually hinting to the 3 martial artists to attack as much as they wanted. It was fine even if they killed him. Anyway, this was Nye Tian's own will. If he died, it would be his own misfortune. Although this Wang Haoshuan appeared to be polite and courteous, his heart was actually ruthless. From this, it could be seen that this person was very scheming. Gu Wuyo thought for a moment and said, "Your Highness, this isn't good, right?" Wang Haoshuan smiled and did not speak. That meaning was very clear. This was Nye Tian seeking death himself. He could not blame others. Nye Tian and the 3 martial artists came to the center of the training field. Wang Haoshuan and the rest watched from afar, each with different expressions. "Stinking brat, you actually dare to challenge the 3 of us at the same time. You're courting death." One of the martial artists looked at Nye Tian coldly. It was as if the 2 of them were not meeting for the first time but enemies with a blood feud. "Heh heh. Arrogant brat, your father doesn't care who you are. A mere 3rd-level giant spirit dregs. Do you really think that you're a big shot? To actually come to the Xian King Manor to behave atrociously. You don't even know your own weight. Beneath your feet is your grave." Another martial artist was even gloomier, directly revealing his killing intent. Tomorrow will be your death anniversary." That 3rd martial artist roared angrily. The aura around his body started to skyrocket. "Humph!" Nye Tianling laughed. His eyes revealed a cold glint as he lightly said, "You guys really talk a lot of nonsense." The reason why he challenged the 3 at the same time was to give Wang Haoshuan enough shock. And the reason why he challenged the 3 of them was because of the other rank 3 star soul in the star soul tablet. Triple layer waves against water. Before, Nye Tian had used the Great Black Seal star soul to fight against 4 first-level true essence realm martial artists. Therefore, he guessed that the triple layer waves against water was enough to intimidate the 3 in front of him. Nye Tian already had an accurate grasp of the power of a rank 3 star soul. A weaker rank 3 star soul was enough for him to instantly kill a first-level true essence realm martial artist. A stronger rank 3 star soul was enough to fight against a 2nd or 3rd level true essence realm martial artist. The triple layer waves against water was the last star soul on the star soul tablet. However, it was the strongest star soul that had been inscribed so far. Nye Tian was confident that he could seriously injure the 3 on the spot. If he could not injure the 3 with a rank 3 star soul, then it would be his turn to suffer. "Kill him!" The 3 martial artists looked at each other and smiled coldly. The 3 of them did not waste any more words and directly attacked, releasing a terrifying aura at the same time. Boom! 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 In midair, a giant fist shadow, a giant palm print, and a giant arrow wrapped in true essence chi appeared at the same time and blasted towards Nye Tian. "Haha, brat! To be able to die under the joint attack of the 3 of us, your identity as the Heaven Luo City Lord is not in vain." The 3 of them laughed wildly. After Scorpio finished speaking, he no longer hesitated. He put his palms together and quickly formed a strange seal. His mouth was also mumbling something. "Oh no!" Gu Wuyo felt the aura of the 3 of them. His heart sank and his face changed. These three guys were not exchanging pointers. They obviously wanted to take Nye Tian's life. Gu Wuyo looked at Wang Haoshuan deeply and said in his heart, everyone said that Xian Wang was wise, but who knew that he was such a despicable person? But just because Nye Tian looked at him a few times, he actually wanted to kill him. Duanmulu and Guden were also nervous. Even if they knew that Nye Tian was tyrannical, they could not help but feel nervous at this moment. In the martial arts practice field, Nye Tian faced the joint attack of the three people. His face was calm as usual, and there was not the slightest bit of panic. In his fearless eyes, there was an inexplicable determination. Rank 3-star soul, 3 layers against water waves. The origin energy in Nye Tian's body burst out, and his indifferent voice sounded. Along with his calm voice, he stabbed out with the sword Absolute Heaven Slash. In the endless sword light, there was actually a giant wave that whizzed out. The giant wave went against the sky, like a dragon coming out of the sea, and collided with the three people's attack. At the moment when it was about to collide, the giant wave actually split into 3, turning into 3 water dragons that swam in 3 different directions. Break! At the same time, Nye Tian roared in a deep voice. Chapter 424. The 3 water dragons broke through the 3 people's attacks, and their aura actually increased. 3 intense dragon roars soared into the sky. Bang! 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 In the next moment, 3 muffled sounds could be heard. The 3 martial artists flew out uniformly. After they landed on the ground, they were all covered in blood and looked extremely pathetic. Shock. Indescribable shock. At this moment, Wang Mingxian felt his head explode and went blank. His expression was blank. Gu Wuyo opened his mouth in an exaggerated manner and couldn't say a word for a long time. Guden and Duanmulu were also extremely shocked. They felt like they were dreaming. Nye Tianling glanced at the 3 people on the ground and shook his head. The power of the 3-layer waves upstream is still too weak. It only injured their appearance. It didn't seriously injure them. Although the 3 people on the ground looked extremely pathetic, they weren't fatally injured. They stood up like good men. However, the 3 people who got up no longer looked at Nye Tian with arrogance in their eyes. Instead, they were deeply fearful and didn't dare to act rashly. Thanks for letting me win. Seeing that the effect of deterrence had been achieved, Nye Tian didn't want to be too aggressive. He said indifferently and turned around. The 3 of them looked at each other in dismay. Their expressions were ugly and they were too ashamed to show their faces. The 3 of them were deeply shocked by Nye Tian's domineering strength. It was impossible for them to think that the 3-layer waves upstream was actually Nye Tian's life-saving method. If they continued to fight, Nye Tian would be in danger. Nye Tian City Lord, you are so strong. I admire you. When Nye Tian was already standing beside him, Wang Haoshuan finally reacted. He looked at Nye Tian with a complicated gaze and a hint of fear. Nye Tian looked at Wang Haoshuan. What he wanted was for Wang Haoshuan. Now that he had achieved his goal, it was great. Your Highness, I don't want your admiration. I want your help, Nye Tian said directly without any pretense. Gu Wuyo and the others were slightly stunned. Who would ask for help so directly? All right. Nye Tian City Lord, let's talk in the main hall. Wang Haoshuan displayed the magnanimity he should have at this moment. He laughed heartily and appeared to be very magnanimous. The corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up slightly. He was very calm and did not seem to be flattered at all. This was the benefit of strength. With strength, one could naturally win respect. Without strength, one could only be an ant. Even if a person of high status spoke softly, others would still be able to hear him clearly. Even if a person of low status shouted himself hoarse, no one would care. This was the cruel reality of the world. A moment later, everyone arrived at the Xian King Manor's meeting hall. Good seats were prepared and good tea was served. Wang Haoshuan did a good job on the surface. Nye Tian City Lord, please say it. What do you want this king to help you with? Wang Haoxuan looked at Nie Tian with a smile. He no longer cared that Nie Tian was staring at him. The person in front of him was the Heaven Luo City Lord, the person who had won the Dragon Blood Martial meeting. There were even rumors that Heaven Luo City was protected by an ancient giant dragon. Now, it was already an unmoving city in the 3,000 small world. Even a Sumeru spirit capital was not as safe as Heaven Luo City. Previously, Wang Haoxuan had always thought that this was all a rumor. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and as it spread, it changed. But now, Wang Haoxuan faintly felt that perhaps this rumor was true. The shock that Nie Tian gave him was too great. Defeating 3 first-level true essence martial artists with a single hand with the strength of a third-level giant spirit. Such a thing, if he did not see it with his own eyes, it was absolutely impossible to believe it. Nie Tian smiled faintly and sipped a mouthful of tea with a look of great enjoyment. Only then did he say, "Your Highness Xian King, we're all smart people. I'll cut to the chase. The matter between me and the Crown Prince, I believe you're already very clear. This time, I came to find your Highness, hoping to borrow your Highness's means to let me meet the great Chu Emperor." Since Wang Haoxuan already knew Nie Tian's identity, then the things that the latter did, he definitely investigated clearly. There was no need to be polite with this kind of self-proclaimed smart person. Wang Haoxuan froze for a moment and immediately said, "Nie Tian City Lord, you want to meet His Majesty? This favor is a little big, even if this king is, Your Highness Xian King." Not waiting for Wang Haoxuan to finish speaking, Nie Tian directly interrupted him and said, "I said it just now, we're all smart people. Let's cut the superfluous chit-chat. You just need to say whether you can do it or not, then state your conditions. That's enough." There was completely no need to be polite with people like Wang Haoxuan. Wang Haoxuan's face fell slightly. Clearly, he did not expect that Nie Tian would actually be so domineering, not giving him a chance to posture at all. Nie Tian City Lord. Wang Haoxuan's expression clearly became ugly. Thinking for a moment, he smiled and said, "You're a smart person. Asking me to help you with such a big favor, you definitely came prepared. State the benefits that you can give this king, then this king will decide whether or not to help you." Wang Haoxuan was not stupid. Of course, he would not agree to Nie Tian empty-handed. Meeting the emperor was too big of a matter. Moreover, Nie Tian was someone who had just escaped from the imperial prison. That made it even more troublesome. Now that the great Chu emperor had retired to the harem, even Wang Haoxuan, a prince, had not seen the emperor for close to half a year. Nie Tian nodded and said directly, "Xian King, we're cooperating, and we're also using each other. This city lord won't beat around the bush. The benefits that this city lord can give you exceed your imagination." Wang Haoxuan's teacup in midair froze for a moment. Soon after, he looked at Nie Tian and said with a smile, "I wonder what benefits Nie Tian City Lord can give this king." Nie Tian paused for a moment. His eyes released a strange light as he said solemnly, "The Emperor of the Great Chu Empire." Bang! As his voice fell, a burning desire flashed in Wang Haoxuan's eyes, and the teacup in his hand fell to the ground. He didn't expect that Nie Tian would dare to say such a thing. Directly giving the Emperor of the Great Chu Empire to Wang Haoxuan? If this was heard by others, they would definitely lose their heads. How could the Emperor of the Great Chu Empire make such a promise so casually? Perhaps even the sect master of the Battle Cloud sect wouldn't dare to say such a thing casually. Although the Great Chu Empire was attached to the Battle Cloud sect, the sect master of the Battle Cloud sect couldn't directly intervene in the internal affairs of the Great Chu Empire. Nie Tian's words were too insolent and reckless. It would bring him great trouble. After a while, Wang Haoxuan reacted, but then he laughed and said, "Nie Tian City Lord, your joke isn't funny at all." Nie Tian took a sip of tea and looked at Wang Haoxuan with a firm expression. He said solemnly, "Xian King, do I look like I'm joking?" Wang Haoxuan's face slowly darkened. He was obviously thinking about something. Of course, he understood Nie Tian's meaning, and he understood even more what this sentence represented. If Nie Tian's words were to spread, not only would he be out of luck, but even Wang Haoxuan would be implicated. However, Wang Haoxuan's desire for the throne was too strong. Moreover, he saw hope in Nie Tian's firm eyes. Chapter 425. Wang Haoxuan's obsession with the throne had reached the point of insanity. Even if he had to take a huge risk, he had to give it a try. Great Chu's crown prince had already been decided. It was Wang Haorui. Wang Haorui had the support of the state preceptor. No matter how big a mistake he made, it was impossible for him to be deposed. Therefore, Wang Haoxuan had no hope at all. Now that the lawless Heaven Luo city lord suddenly appeared, Wang Haoxuan seemed to see a glimmer of hope. For this glimmer of hope, he was willing to bet everything. However, he didn't know how Nie Tian was going to help him ascend the throne. Nie Tian smiled indifferently. In the next moment, a cold, killing intent surfaced on his face. He said coldly, "I will help you kill him." "Kill who?" Wang Haoxuan's body trembled. His expression was tense and his heart jumped to his throat. Killing intent flashed in Nie Tian's eyes as he replied, "Kill the person who stopped you from ascending the throne, Crown Prince Wang Haorui." Wang Haorui. When Nie Tian said this name, Wang Haoxuan's face stiffened. In the next moment, he couldn't conceal his joy. In his heart, he knew that Wang Haorui was the biggest obstacle on his path to the throne. As long as this obstacle was gone, the throne would naturally be his. The other princes didn't have the ability to compete with Wang Haoxuan. As long as Wang Haorui was dead, Great Chu's crown prince would definitely be his. When Nie Tian said these words, Gu Wuyo and the rest were stunned. Gu Wuyo originally thought that Nie Tian would say that Wang Haorui might be from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. She didn't expect that Nie Tian would actually promise Wang Haoxuan to kill Wang Haorui. With Nie Tian's strength, he indeed had the chance to kill Wang Haorui. However, whether he would do it or not was another matter. After half a minute, Wang Haoxuan finally calmed down. However, he was still worried and suddenly asked in a low voice, "Nie Tian City Lord, how can this king believe you?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "You already believe me." Wang Haoxuan was still far from being able to scheme in front of Nie Tian. At this moment, Wang Haoxuan must have 10,000 little rabbits jumping around in his heart. Although he was doubtful, he had already believed Nie Tian. Of killing Wang Haorui, Nie Tian had the ability and motive. Nie Tian and Wang Haorui were like fire and water, and wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. He was thinking that Wang Haoxuan was a fool. Wang Haoxuan was also a fool. Actually, the person blocking Wang Haoxuan's throne wasn't Wang Haorui, but the imperial preceptor behind him. Gu Wuyo had made it very clear that without the support of the state preceptor, Wang Haorui would have been crippled. Emperor of Wu, that of Prince of Waf, he, Wang Wdo Hof, the throne of Haorui. The imperial preceptor behind him would definitely find a random prince to replace Wang Haorui. This replacement would definitely not be Wang Haoxuan. Nie Tian suspected that the current chaos in the Great Chu imperial clan was caused by this imperial master. As for what this imperial preceptor wanted to do, Nie Tian had no idea. Maybe he would know when he saw Wang Haoxuan. Nie Tian didn't have a good impression of Wang Haoxuan. Even if Wang Haoxuan became the crown prince or the emperor, he would be an iron-blooded monarch. He was absolutely not a wise ruler. Since they were using each other, he would just give you an empty promise. To the people around him, Nie Tian was a man of his word. To others, it was a different story. Nie Tian never thought of himself as a good person. He was just a bad person who liked to beat up bad people. Good. Wang Haoxuan was finally unable to suppress the excitement in his heart. He laughed and said, "Nie Tian City Lord, this prince will help you. Xian King is so bold." Nie Tian smiled faintly. His eyes were complicated and gloomy. Between him and Wang Haoshuan, it was a tiger-wolf plot, each taking what he needed. Xian King, when are we going to see His Majesty? Nie Tian asked after taking a sip of tea. Nie Tian, City Lord, don't be impatient. If you enter the palace, you need someone to accompany you. Wang Haoshuan stood up. His face was melancholy. He said, the palace is not peaceful now. Without an expert accompanying, even this prince doesn't dare to enter the palace. Nie Tian was slightly taken aback. He smiled and said, is there someone who dares to make a move against His Highness Xian King in the palace? Wang Haoshuan sighed and didn't answer Nie Tian's question. He said, Nie Tian, City Lord, please wait patiently for a day. Tomorrow, this prince will bring you into the palace to see His Majesty. Actually, Wang Haoshuan was confused. Why did Nie Tian want to see the emperor? This had nothing to do with killing Wang Haorui. But since Nie Tian didn't say, he didn't ask. All right. Nie Tian wasn't in a hurry, so he agreed immediately. Next, Wang Haoshuan ordered people to arrange a small courtyard for Nie Tian and the others to stay in the Xian King's residence for a day. After arriving at the small courtyard, Gu Wuyo bade farewell and left the Xian King's residence. After all, she was the commander of the Imperial Guards and couldn't stay in the Xian King's residence for too long. Gooden, what do you think of General Gu's strength? Nie Tian looked at Gu Wuyo's back and suddenly asked. Gooden heard Nie Tian's question and subconsciously touched the bloodstain on his face. He nodded and said, very powerful. Gooden fought with Gu Wuyo not long ago and was even slapped by her whip. Wuyo's strength is above mine, Duanmu Lu said seriously. Wuyo. Nie Tian glanced at Duanmu Lu and said with a smile, it seems like the two of you are progressing smoothly. Gu Wuyo called Duanmu Lu Duanmu, and Duanmu Lu called her Wuyo. The speed at which their relationship warmed up was beyond Nie Tian's expectations. Duanmu Lu's face turned red, and the redness reached his neck. Nie Tian stopped joking, and his face turned gloomy in the next moment. He said, Gu Wuyo's strength is indeed powerful, but she's still lacking compared to a true element realm martial artist. Of course, even if she's at the 9th level of the giant soul realm, she doesn't have any true element chi in her body. How can she fight against a true element realm martial artist? Gooden said arrogantly. Nie Tian nodded and frowned. He said, the Great Chu Empire is a first-rate empire. A mere Xian King has subordinates at the 1st level of the true element realm, and Gu Wuyo is only at the 9th level of the giant soul realm. Isn't it strange that she can become the commander of the Imperial Guards? Gooden and Duanmu Lu were stunned at the same time, and they immediately nodded. Gu Wuyo was a general on the battlefield. This position didn't have high requirements for personal strength. The key was the ability to command the battlefield and grasp of the battle situation. Therefore, even if she was young and not strong, she could still become a general. However, the commander of the Imperial Guards was different. This was the guard that protected the Imperial City, so of course it had to be a strong person. Nie Tian estimated that Gu Wuyo's subordinates were stronger than her. Gu Wuyo was transferred to the Imperial City as a commander a year ago. At that time, the person in control of the Imperial City should be the state preceptor, not the emperor who retired to the palace. Thinking about how Gu Wuyo's parents died in the hands of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion's assassins, Nie Tian seemed to smell a conspiracy. If Wang Haorui was from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, then the state preceptor who supported him must be related to the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. No matter how he looked at it, Gu Wuyo's position as the commander of the Imperial Guards seemed like a method to trap her in the Imperial City. Chapter 426. Gu Wuyo's parents died in the hands of the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion, which undoubtedly meant that their identities weren't simple. Gu Wuyo, who was born and raised on the battlefield, was inexplicably transferred back to the Imperial City to be an unsuitable commander of the Imperial Guards. How could such a thing be strange? Although Duanmulu and Gooden were curious, they didn't know what Nye Tian was referring to. Teacher, are you saying that Wuyo isn't qualified to be the commander of the Imperial Guards? Duanmulu asked with a frown. You can say that. Nye Tian nodded and said, but she did, and she did it for more than a year. That's the strange part. Duanmulu fell silent, then said, but I still don't understand what you mean, teacher. Is boss Nye Tian suspecting that female general? Gooden also interrupted. Nye Tian was speechless. These two guys were like 1 against 2 when they stood together. Since Duanmulu and Gu Wuyo were so close, Nye Tian naturally had to find out more about her background. Previously in the tea house, Nye Tian had asked the tea house staff and the tea house owner about Gu Wuyo, so there was definitely no problem with her identity. For a general like Gu Wuyo to be the commander of the Imperial Guards, Nye Tian intuitively guessed that there must be someone controlling her from behind. No matter what the person's purpose was, it definitely wasn't simple. Nye Tian guessed that there might be something that they couldn't find on Gu Wuyo's parents, and they wanted to continue looking for it on her. Seeing that Duanmulu was still waiting for his answer, Nye Tian had no choice but to say, Good disciple, you don't need to know too much right now. Just know that your future wife might be in danger, and that's enough. Wuyo is in danger. Duanmulu was stunned and even forgot to blush. Why is she in danger? Could it be that someone dares to make a move against the commander of the Imperial Guard of the Great Chu Empire? Godan was stunned for a moment, and then he recovered from his shock and continued asking. Nye Tian sighed softly and murmured, It's not that someone dares to move, but that they will definitely move. It's just that the time is not right yet. Originally, he was just roaring at the sight of injustice. Who knew that roaring would cause so many problems? Nye Tian was speechless. However, he was a person who would not turn back even if he ran into a wall. This matter, no matter what it involved, no matter who it was, he would not let it go. He would definitely get involved to the end. Pervert. It's really you. Just as Nye Tian was about to return to his room to rest, a familiar voice suddenly sounded. Yaoer? Nye Tian turned his head slightly and saw that the person in front of him was none other than the little girl he met in the Thousand Spring Courtyard. Yao, pervert? Duanmulu and Godan looked at Nye Tian at the same time, and their gazes were strange. Their expressions seemed to be saying, What did you do to this little girl? Being called a pervert by an 11-year-old little girl in front of him, Nye Tian simply felt like there were vertical lines on his head. Especially when his good disciple, Duanmulu, was right beside him. It was really the rhythm of losing his chastity in old age. Yaoer, don't shout blindly. Subsequently, Murong Ziying's figure appeared. At this time, Murong Ziying had taken off her men's clothes and changed into women's clothes. She wore a pink dress, and her slightly developed body had the unique charm of a young girl. Her facial features were exquisite, and she was actually a rare beauty. Young Lady Murong, why are you here? Nye Tian couldn't help but feel strange and puzzled when he saw Murong Ziying and Yaoer appear. Before Murong Ziying could answer, Yaoer took a step forward and said, His Highness Xian Monarch is my young lady's senior brother, so why can't we appear here? But you, pervert, why are you here? Xian Monarch is young Lady Murong's senior brother? Nye Tian was even more stunned. Previously, when Murong Ziying took out a time-space teleportation scroll, Nye Tian already knew that her identity was extraordinary. However, he didn't expect that she was actually the junior sister of Great Chu's second prince. Right now, Nye Tian was surprised because in his heart, Murong Ziying's identity should be even higher. The junior sister of Great Chu's second prince was indeed extraordinary, but compared to that time-space teleportation scroll, it still didn't match. You're that handsome young master? Gooden reacted at this moment and exclaimed. Murong Ziying tactfully smiled, revealing the shy side of a young girl, and explained, Actually, to be exact, His Highness Xian Monarch isn't my senior brother. It's just that my teacher and His Highness Xian Monarch's mother are senior brother and junior sister, so I address His Highness Xian Monarch as senior brother. So that's how it is. Nie Tian slightly nodded and inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. In his heart, he really didn't want Morong Ziying and Wang Haoxuan to have a close relationship. Actually, this is also my first time coming to the Xian Monarch residence. Yao and I are. As Morong Ziying spoke, she hesitated for a while and still said, Yao and I carried teacher out of the valley. Because of what happened yesterday, I didn't know where to put those girls, so I could only come here. Carried teacher. Nie Tian slightly nodded, and he roughly understood what was going on. Morong Ziying and Yao were the same as Duanmulu and Duanmulu back then. They both wanted to travel alone behind the adults' backs and experience the wonders of the outside world. The time-space teleportation scroll that you used last night was refined by your teacher, right? Nie Tian asked. Morong Ziying nodded. Nie Tian slightly frowned and said in his heart, It seems that my previous guess was right. There is indeed a big shot behind Morong Ziying. She mentioned the valley just now, so it seems that her teacher should be a hidden powerhouse, a spiritual formation master that could refine time-space teleportation scroll is really not simple. I must meet him if I have the chance. Oh, by the way, where are those girls now? Nie Tian suddenly thought of the girls that he had saved in the butterfly pavilion last night, and asked, You pervert, why are you still thinking about those girls? Yao fiercely glared at Nie Tian and said with annoyance. Nie Tian was speechless. It seemed that he couldn't get rid of the title of pervert. Yao brother Nie Tian is a good person. Don't call him that. Morong Ziying looked at Yao and pretended to be angry. Oh, I understand. Yao understands. Yao lowered her head and her mood immediately became downcast. It's okay. Seeing that the little girl was about to cry, Nie Tian hurriedly smiled and said, It's just a child's words. Besides, I'm not a good person. I'm just a bad person who likes to beat up bad people. You are a bad person. Yao immediately turned her angry face into a smile, and pouted her small mouth and said, Good people won't go to that kind of place. Nie Tian was speechless. This little girl only needed a little sunshine to be happy. Morong Ziying also couldn't do anything about Yao. Although they were master and servant, they were like sisters. Morong Ziying only treated Yao as her younger sister, so of course she wouldn't really be angry. After that, Morong Ziying brought Nie Tian to a small courtyard to see how those girls were doing. Master, where are you taking us? Miss Morong hasn't come back yet. Can we go there after she comes back? Just when Nie Tian and the others arrived, they heard the sound of girls crying from afar. Chapter 427. Nie Tian and the others quickly arrived outside the small courtyard. Several horse carriages were currently parked outside the courtyard, and a few servants of the Xian King Manor were currently pulling those girls onto the horse carriages. Those girls were obviously unwilling and resisted with all their might. Unfortunately, the more they resisted, the more excited those servants got. There were even some who started to stretch out their perverted hands to take advantage of the girls. What are you guys doing? Morong Ziying saw this scene and shouted out delicately, her face revealing an uncontrollable rage. Miss Morong. Those few servants obviously recognized Morong Ziying and hurriedly bowed. One of the servants in the lead went up and said, This lowly one has come under the orders of the second housekeeper to send these girls away. Send where? Nie Tian took a step forward and asked coldly. That servant glanced at Nie Tian and saw that it was a youth. He thought that Nie Tian was Morong Ziying's subordinate, and his expression became slightly angry as he reprimanded. I'm talking to your families, miss. Is it your turn to interrupt? Impudent. Slap. Before the waiter could finish saying the word little, he was answered with a resounding slap in the face. This slap was given by Nie Tian very fiercely. That servant's face immediately swelled up with several bloody marks. He felt that his ears were blurry, and he almost couldn't hear anything. Nie Tian saw it clearly just now. This servant was the most shameless. Both his hands were randomly touching the girls' bodies. That servant covered half of his face and stared blankly at Nie Tian for a long time, unable to react. Third Master, are you all right? The other servants saw that their little leader was hit and reacted after a long time, and they were all astonished. Little brat, do you know who I am? Are you looking for? That servant called Third Master immediately reacted and roared loudly, throwing a punch towards Nie Tian. Although this guy was only a servant, he also had the strength of the 9th level of the Origin Spirit Realm. With a punch, he actually exploded with quite a bit of aura. Unfortunately, this kind of aura was better than nothing in front of Nie Tian. Bang! Before Master San could finish his roar, a muffled sound rang out and he was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, there was a loud crashing sound. His internal organs were about to shatter. The rest of the servants were scared out of their wits. They looked at Nie Tian, trembling in fear. Benefactor. At this time, a girl recognized Nie Tian and shouted excitedly. Li Jiao was also among these girls. She ran out and knelt down, unable to control the tears in her eyes. She looked at Nie Tian, not knowing what to say. Nie Tian asked her to stand up and said, "Don't kneel before me, and don't kneel before anyone. No one is worth kneeling to." Li Jiao was stunned. She didn't know what Nie Tian was talking about. Nie Tian glanced at the girl in front of him and was slightly moved. These girls were all ordinary people. They could only be lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Leaving the butterfly transformation pavilion and coming to the Xian King's residence was like leaving the tiger's den and entering the wolf's lair. Without strength, one would only be bullied no matter where one went. This was a cruel world where martial arts were respected. Nie Tian asked the girls to return to the courtyard first. He would handle the rest of the matter. Who dares to go back? All of you, get in the carriage. Just as the girls turned around and were about to return to the small courtyard, a domineering voice suddenly sounded. Immediately, a figure appeared. It was a middle-aged martial artist who looked to be in his 40s or 50s. He had a majestic aura. He was actually a powerhouse in the first tier of True Element. Second housekeeper. When the servants saw the person, their eyes lit up. They were even more excited than when they saw their own father. Uncle. That San Yi was even more unbearable. He shouted loudly and wailed loudly. When the second housekeeper saw Third Master Ho's miserable appearance, he immediately frowned. His gaze swept over Nie Tian and the others, and he shouted angrily, "Who did this? Me." The person who answered him was Nie Tian's calm voice. "Who are you?" The second housekeeper had never seen Nie Tian before, so he didn't know his identity. He frowned and asked. "A guest of the Xian King's residence," Nie Tian answered indifferently. "Guest?" The second housekeeper was slightly stunned. He sneered and said, "I've seen many guests, but I've never seen a guest as arrogant as you. Then I'll let you see one today." Nie Tianling looked at the second housekeeper coldly and immediately sent a voice transmission to Gooden, who was beside him. "Kill him." "Huh." Gooden was slightly stunned. He looked at Nie Tian and suspected that he had heard wrongly. "Kill him." Nie Tian nodded grimly and repeated himself, the look in his eyes brimming with determination. This second housekeeper's strength was at the first tier of True Element. If Nie Tian made a move himself, he would definitely have to spend some effort. It was better to let Gooden do it. This fellow had been following Nie Tian. He couldn't let him do nothing. "You dare to touch the people of the Xian King's residence. You're courting death." The second housekeeper sensed something and took the initiative to attack. He knew Wang Haoxuan's character very well. He was very protective. Nie Tian was just a guest of the Xian King's residence. Moreover, he was the one who made the first move. So, even if he killed him now, it didn't matter. The second housekeeper blasted out a punch. A powerful aura rolled over and directly pressed down on Nye Tian. You dare to touch Boss Nye Tian? Do you think I don't exist? Gooden immediately reacted and similarly blasted out a punch. Both of them were martial artists at the first tier of true element. Their brazen exchange of blows was very powerful. Nye Tian immediately propped up the extreme with jade sky armor and wrapped all the girls. These girls were just ordinary people. Any impact from the airwave would be fatal to them. Bang! With a dull sound, the second housekeeper let out a miserable scream and was directly sent flying. Gooden's figure didn't move. He was unharmed. He turned around and looked at Nye Tian. The latter nodded gloomily. Nye Tian just said that he would kill the second housekeeper. He wasn't joking. Gooden didn't hesitate anymore. He took a big step forward and brazenly blasted out a punch towards the second housekeeper, who was already lying on the ground. The second housekeeper was so scared that his face turned pale. The fear in his eyes was extreme. He never thought that as the second housekeeper of the Xian Prince Manor, he would actually be killed in the Xian Prince Manor. Stop! At the moment of imminent peril, a voice rang out. Boom! A vigorous airwave swept over and actually forced Gooden to take a few steps back. A figure floated over and landed behind the second housekeeper. Your Highness! The second housekeeper raised his head. When he saw the person's face clearly, he stood up agitatedly. He pointed at Nye Tian and roared, "This stinking brat, he, shut up!" Before the second housekeeper could finish speaking, Wang Haoshuan directly interrupted him. The second housekeeper was stunned. His face was full of questions. In the past, Wang Haoshuan was a very protective person. However, following that, his expression became even more astonished because he saw that Nye Tian was actually staring straight at Wang Haoshuan while talking. This was simply absurd. In the Xian Prince Manor, even the chief housekeeper had to lower his head when talking to Wang Haoshuan. What exactly was the identity of this guest, Nye Tian, that he actually dared to speak to Wang Haoshuan like this? Your Highness. Nye Tian stared straight at Wang Haoshuan and didn't conceal the anger in his heart at all. The second housekeeper definitely had Wang Haoshuan's instructions for him to dare to come and arrest people. This Wang Haoshuan looked dignified on the surface, but in reality, he was worse than a beast. He wasn't much better than the crown prince. Nye Tian City Lord, this matter is a misunderstanding. Wang Haoshuan thought for a moment and opened his mouth to explain. Chapter 428. As soon as Nye Tian said that, everyone was stunned. They looked at Nye Tian in surprise, as if they were doubting whether they had heard it wrong. Nye Tian City Lord, you? Wang Haoshuan was confused. He also doubted whether he had heard it wrong. You didn't hear it wrong. I said, I want him dead. Nye Tian repeated. His eyes were so cold that it was suffocating. This time, everyone looked at Nye Tian with an expression that seemed to be saying, Are you crazy? In the Xian King's mansion, he ordered the Xian King to kill his housekeeper. It would be strange if people didn't think that Nye Tian was crazy after hearing such words. However, the killing intent in Nye Tian's eyes was definitely not a joke. Originally, everyone thought that Wang Haoshuan was merciful when he stopped Gooden. When he spoke just now, it was obvious that he wanted to explain. In fact, it was equivalent to an apology. He gave Nye Tian so much face, but Nye Tian didn't let it go. He even asked to kill the housekeeper. It was a little too much. Nye Tian City Lord, I will pretend that you didn't say anything just now. This matter ends here. I will take care of these girls and ensure their safety. What do you think? Wang Haoshuan's face was gloomy, and he forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart. The reason why the second housekeeper wanted to take these girls away was because of Wang Haoshuan's order. It was a waste to keep these girls in the Xian King's mansion. Wang Haoshuan wanted to give them to the officials in the imperial city as an extra benefit. However, when Nye Tian suddenly came to the Xian King's mansion, Wang Haoshuan learned from Murong Xing that these girls were saved by Nye Tian from the butterfly transformation loft. He was afraid that Nye Tian would come to check on the girls. If he found out that the girls were missing, it would be terrible, so he came to stop him. Who knew that he would run into Nye Tian's anger? Wang Haoxuan had a deal with Nye Tian now, and this deal was related to whether he could ascend the throne in the future. Of course, he didn't want to offend Nye Tian over such a small matter. After thinking about it, Wang Haoxuan chose to lower his stance and keep the peace. Wang Haoxuan, didn't you hear what I just said? This time, Nye Tian was truly enraged. He called out Wang Haoxuan's name and pointed at the second steward. He enunciated each word clearly, I want him dead. When the second butler saw Nye Tian's ferocious gaze that was like that of a jackal, he instantly shuddered. He instinctively looked at Wang Haoxuan, truly afraid that the latter would agree to Nye Tian's request. At this moment, Nye Tian's behavior was no longer an order, but a naked threat. Nye Tian's actions might seem overly arrogant in the eyes of outsiders. However, he knew that this was the only way to save these girls. The second housekeeper was just a chess piece. Wang Haoxuan was the one giving the orders. If he didn't make Wang Haoxuan pay the price and let him know the pain, he would definitely have designs on these girls again. Even if he didn't, his subordinates would definitely have designs. Killing the second housekeeper was to tell everyone in the Xian King's residence that these girls were being protected, and no one could touch them. Whoever touched them would die. Most of these girls were orphans or people who were sold by their parents. They had no place to go for the time being and had to stay in the Xian King's residence for a long time. At least before Nye Tian returned to Heaven Luo City, they had to stay in the Xian King's residence. Nye Tian didn't want someone to have designs on them right after he left. Killing the second housekeeper at this moment was to make an example to others, to make a show of force. However, looking at Wang Haoxuan's expression, he didn't want to kill the second housekeeper anymore. Nye Tian. This time, Wang Haoxuan was also angry. His face darkened and he said, This isn't your Heaven Luo City. This is the Xian King's residence of the Great Chu Empire. I have the final say in everything here. No one had ever dared to speak to Wang Haoxuan like this, especially when he was in the Xian King's residence. If he was still threatened in his own residence, then he would be too useless as a prince. All right. Nye Tian suddenly calmed down and said, Your Highness Xian King, the deal between us is cancelled. I'll take all these girls away now. Goodbye. After Nye Tian finished speaking, he immediately prepared to leave. Guden and Duanmu Lu were stunned at first, but they immediately reacted and prepared to leave with the girls. Murong Xing Yaoer and her servant were stunned. Their expressions were stiff, and they couldn't understand at all. How could there be such an unreasonable person like Nye Tian? He was a guest in someone's residence, and he even wanted to kill their housekeeper. He was simply too arrogant. Those girls were also stunned for a long time. Li Jiao was the first to react. She quickly stood behind Nye Tian, and the other girls immediately followed suit. Nye Tian City Lord. Seeing that Nye Tian was really going to leave, Wang Haoxuan's face darkened even more, and his eyes revealed a murderous intent. He said coldly, Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? I'll let you play with me. You can cancel the deal just because you say so, but what if I'm not willing? What can you do if you're not willing? Nye Tianling smiled coldly. Nye Tian, are you so confident? Wang Haoxuan saw that Nye Tian didn't have any fear, and he was even angrier. He said, If I'm not willing, do you think you can still walk out of the Xian King residence? If I leave, do you dare to stop me? Nye Tian didn't have the slightest fear, and his eyes were even filled with extreme disdain. You can try. Wang Haoxuan roared angrily. In the next moment, more than 10 black-clothed figures descended from the sky, flew out and landed neatly on the ground. They knelt at the same time and shouted, Your Highness Xian King. 18 black-clothed martial artists, all at the first level of True Essence Realm, suddenly appeared with an imposing manner. As long as Wang Haoxuan gave the order, They could tear Nye Tian into pieces in the blink of an eye. When Guden and Duanmu Lu saw this lineup, their hearts sunk and their faces showed fear. Murong Xing and Yaoer were scared silly. They didn't know how things escalated to this step. Those girls were even more scared silly, subconsciously hiding behind Nye Tian and the others. But Nye Tian's expression didn't change. Instead, he raised his eyebrows and swept a glance at these black-clothed martial artists. His face was full of provocation as he said with a cold smile, "Wang Haoshuan, you want to stop me with just these people? Let me tell you honestly, even if the great Chu Emperor came today, no one would dare to stop me if I wanted to leave." "Is that so?" Wang Haoshuan saw that Nye Tian was very calm. That kind of confidence was clearly not fake. He asked in a cold voice, "I want to see where Nye Tian's city lord gets such confidence from. Just based on your third-level Spirit King strength?" Wang Haoshuan knew that Nye Tian's strength was very strong, and could even be said to be. But to want to defeat 18 first-level True Essence Realm martial artists, in addition to him, a third-level True Essence Realm martial artist, in 4 words, absolutely impossible. His guess was right. Not to mention that Nye Tian didn't have any Star Souls on him now, even if the Star Soul monument was full and he had 4 third-level Star Souls, it was absolutely impossible to defeat the lineup in front of him. But Nye Tian clearly didn't want to force his way out. He was so confident because he had the capital to be so confident. Just based on this, Nye Tian smiled faintly, and an exquisite black iron token appeared in his hand. He showed it in front of Wang Haoshuan, and 2 words were engraved on it: red-clothed. Chapter 429. When Wang Haoshuan saw the token in Nye Tian's hand, his expression turned sluggish, and he was speechless. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "You didn't see wrongly, this is the Alchemist Guild's red robe token. Just based on this, do you dare to stop me?" That's right, the black iron token that appeared in Nye Tian's hand was the Alchemist Guild's red robe token that Gu Yi gave him previously. Once, Luo Fen used the red robe token to threaten Nye Tian, but unfortunately, Nye Tian didn't care about threats at all. He wasn't afraid of offending the Alchemist Guild's Red Robe Elder. Nye Tian wasn't afraid of offending the Red Robe Elder, but it didn't mean that Wang Haoshuan wasn't. Looking at the latter's sluggish reaction, it was obvious that he was afraid. Before Nye Tian threatened Wang Haoshuan, he had already thought of a way out. Even if the Red Robe token couldn't suppress Wang Haoshuan, Nye Tian still had the Tang family's inner sect token that Tang 13 gave him. That was a token that only Tang family's inner sect elders and above had. If the Tang family's inner sect elder token was not used, Nye Tian still had the rank 4 Pill Master badge issued by the Alchemist Guild. This was what he asked Gu Yi for before he left Heaven Luo City. With the rank 4 Pill Master badge, it was a direct proof that Nye Tian was a member of the Alchemist Guild. If someone dared to kill a rank 4 Pill Master of the Alchemist Guild, that was blatantly provoking the Alchemist Guild. At that time, not only would Wang Haoshuan be out of luck, the entire Great Chu Empire and even Battle Cloud sect would be implicated. But Nye Tian didn't want to take out so many badges to fool people. Unless it was a last resort, he wouldn't take out the red robe token. At this moment, if it wasn't to save these girls, he wouldn't take out the red robe token. And he also knew that these badges could only be used to bluff people like Wang Haoshuan. If he met people from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, it would be useless. Stand down. After confirming that the token in Nye Tian's hand was really the red robe token, Wang Haoshuan's angry face immediately fell and was forced to calm down. He had no choice but to wave his hand. The 18 black-clothed martial artists immediately retreated. Very good. Nye Tian put away the red-robed order and said with a faint smile, "The Xian monarch is a smart man after all and has made a wise choice." Wang Haoshuan could not afford to offend the red-clothed alchemist elder. He did not want to offend someone he could not afford to offend just because of a mere Nye Tian. "Your Highness, Xian King." Nie Tian stared at Wang Haoxuan and said, I'll ask you again. Will you kill the people around you or not? Nie Tian's meaning was very clear. If Wang Haoxuan killed the second butler, then the deal would continue. If he didn't, then the deal would be cancelled, and he would immediately leave the Xian imperial residence with his men. Wang Haoxuan fell silent, his expression becoming gloomy and conflicted. Nie Tian was not in a hurry and gave the other party enough time to think. The second housekeeper was so scared that his face turned green. He didn't know what kind of deal Wang Haoxuan and Nie Tian had. It was so important that Wang Haoxuan had to consider it carefully. The hearts of the surrounding people jumped to their throat. They didn't know how Wang Haoxuan would choose. Nie Tian had a calm expression. He already had a card up his sleeve in his heart. He predicted that Wang Haoxuan would kill the second housekeeper. On one side was the throne, and on the other side was a dispensable housekeeper. For someone like Wang Haoxuan, it shouldn't be difficult to decide which was the right choice. Wang Haoxuan was deep in thought. At a certain moment, his eyes revealed a hint of coldness, and he suddenly looked at the second housekeeper. Your Highness, I. The second housekeeper was stunned, and the fear in his eyes reached the peak. Bang! However, in the next moment, before he could react, Wang Haoxuan's palm directly hit the top of his head. PFFF. Instantly, the second housekeeper's brain matter burst out, and he fell to the ground dead. When everyone saw this scene, an uncontrollable fear emerged in their hearts. Wang Haoxuan was too ruthless. He killed the second housekeeper on the spot without giving the latter any chance to react. It could only be said that the second housekeeper had bad luck to meet such a master. Nie Tian looked at Wang Haoxuan and didn't say anything. Nie Tian City Lord, I have done what you wanted me to do. I hope you won't forget our deal. Wang Haoxuan stared at Nie Tian and said coldly. He killed the second housekeeper with his own hand. If Nie Tian couldn't fulfill the deal between them, then he would suffer a great loss. Nie Tian had the red robe order in his hands. Even if he left now, Wang Haoxuan wouldn't dare to stop him. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will definitely kill that person for you. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He was very satisfied with Wang Haoxuan's performance. Of course, Nie Tian knew that the second housekeeper was just a scapegoat. The real person who deserved to die was Wang Haoxuan. However, the second housekeeper's death was also very valuable. At least the people from the Xian residence wouldn't dare to do anything to these girls anymore. As for Crown Prince Wang Haorui, Nie Tian would definitely kill him. However, he wouldn't kill him for Wang Haoxuan, because the former deserved to die anyway. Even without Wang Haoxuan, Nie Tian would still kill Wang Haorui. At this moment, Wang Haoxuan looked at Nie Tian with deep fear in his eyes. At this moment, he realized that he had completely invited a great Buddha. He couldn't afford to offend, touch, or offend him. Wang Haoxuan asked someone to deal with the second housekeeper's corpse and left angrily. Nie Tian comforted the girls and said a few words to Murong Xing. He inquired about some things and then returned to his own courtyard. In the courtyard, Boss Nie Tian, you offended His Highness Xian King like this. Aren't you afraid that he will take revenge behind your back? Guden stood behind Nie Tian and couldn't help but ask. Nie Tian turned back to look at Guden and smiled faintly. When did this guy learn to use his brain? Do you think that if I don't offend Xian King, he won't take revenge? Nie Tian's lips curled up as he said, Between me and Xian King, it has always been a scheme between tigers and wolves. Before I kill Wang Haorui, he won't touch me. If I kill Wang Haorui, will he allow a person who knows the truth to continue living? At this moment, I will give him a little shock to let him know that I can't afford to offend him. Duanmu Lu nodded slightly and said in his heart, How can teacher think so far ahead? His thoughts seemed to be even worse than father's. Duanmu Lu couldn't understand why Nie Tian, who was clearly around the same age as him, was so meticulous and flawless every time he did something. Even those big shots who were very shrewd would find it hard to do so. Nie Tian was able to deduce that Gu Wuyo was in danger just by relying on some indiscernible traces. Such sharp deduction ability was truly surprising. Boss Nie Tian, who do you think His Highness Xian King will invite into the palace? Guden seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked. Wang Haoshuan asked Nie Tian and the others to wait patiently for a day. If they wanted to enter the palace, they had to wait for someone. They didn't know who that person was. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "If I didn't guess wrongly, it should be a big shot." "You know who it is?" Guden and Duanmu Lu asked at the same time when they saw Nie Tian's confident look.